Hey everybody, welcome. Fedora Friday number 9. Fedora Friday number 9. Wow, it is Halloween, right? Happy Halloween to all those folks that recognize the holiday. I know that was something that we don't usually get take off from work for, but it is a holiday nonetheless. And well, it's something where this movie that I have today, I feel like it's fitting. It's fitting for so many reasons. But yeah. Wow, wow. Again, it's all about having fun, right? It's about the kids, but it's also about the adults that, well, we may not be kids anymore, but we do like to have fun, and I told you, basically the idea behind this whole channel, behind kind of my new purpose in life is to kind of just have fun at all times possible. And I feel like that there's such a great movie to represent that today. Again, I don't know how else to put it other than like I right now I'm kind of at the point where I refuse not to have fun. Um, hey, good morning. I knew you said Jay, but I think you meant Jake, and that's who I'm trying to emulate, right? And we'll go into like a lot of that, right? So it's like, oh, look, well, why Jake? I mean, there's no real kind of there's a reason, but it's not like I don't like Elwood. Elwood is great. It's like those two characters are fantastic. Anyway, happy Halloween to you, Josh. I have no idea if you have any kids, you don't need to share that. But this is kind of a holiday that's kind of allegedly just for the kids, right? For the kids to go out there, get dressed up, have a lot of fun, and don't get me wrong, it is that, right? But it's so much more than that. Halloween is one of those days, right, where we have permission, right? Not that we need it, right? We have permission to dress up as a character that that you relate to or have some kind of meaning in your life. And the thing is about it is that, well, you don't really need, right? There's certain folks out there, we know, right? We've seen them, right? Many folks will describe us hat folks, people that love hats, as people that do that, right? Like we're okay not being cookie cutter. And that's why I love Halloween, because it's like in essence, everybody kind of becomes a hat person on Halloween, even if they're not wearing a hat, right? Like you become one of those folks that just doesn't give a darn, and not everybody does, right? Like it kind of shows you the power of kind of that perceived pressure that like, hey, don't go out there, right? You're not a kid, right? Like you are an adult, right? You're not supposed to be doing this stuff. Hey, I got my man Paul. Paul, how's it going, my friend?
Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm doing well, having fun, which, kind of is within character. I was just talking about like that whole, and again, I don't know, right? So I've never spent Halloween, outside of the US. I don't know how Halloween is even celebrated or even perceived, across the pond, so I was hoping that be my first question for you, Paul.
Yeah. I mean, we do celebrate it, and
Yeah.
I mean, every year for the last sort of 30 or 40 years, my wife, more than myself, has either put out the Halloween decorations on the front windows, and then we have a big bowl of sweets. In fact, we've got cakes and sweets and little gifts for children if they come round, so that when they get a knock on the door, we go there and we listen and look at them and then give them a little treat. So we do celebrate it, and but what's happened is where we live, the families have grown up, but the parents have stayed living in the area because it's sort of semi-rural and there's no need to move really. And so the number of children that live in the area have gone down and down and down, and so we're not expecting any more than maybe 6 or 10, if that, this evening.
Yeah, and you, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. That's good to know. I was actually just talking about that right before you entered the room about like it's such a holiday that means so much more to me now that I'm a hat person. And we've discussed this and we've touched upon this topic so many times, right? I either us together or with Robert, and obviously when I've been here or bloviating by myself, the idea that wearing a hat in many ways is akin to wearing a costume, we do it for a variety of reasons. Some of us don't wear it just because it's a costume, right? It's because, well, we somehow bridged that barrier, right? And with your situation, right, there was a health reason for wearing a hat, right? Whatever it was that got us to the point where we said, we're going to go out in public wearing this thing on our head, right? We kind of talked about I don't know if we've talked about it, but the religious right reasons for a lot of folks, right? In the Jewish Orthodox community, and shout out to Steve, because Steve Goldstein, he is, Jewish himself, and he sells, like, his business thrives on that community that really, for religious reasons, need to have something on top of their head. So, right, there's whatever is that lever, right? We talked about the levers that pull you into this subculture, because that's what it is. And, for better or worse, it's a subculture. It's not normative to wear a hat these days. The nice thing about Halloween is that it takes one of those. It's another one of those levers for folks where maybe if their character, right, wears a hat, or right, and I don't even care, right? Like, I don't care if your character doesn't wear a hat, right? My character does, but that's me. The fact that you are willing to go out, right? And so the children are one thing. The adults that choose to do it, I really feel like for those folks that are willing to don a costume as an adult, I feel like their hats are really just a natural next step for those folks, because they already don't give a darn, right? Meaning, we know that society has put that kind of message out there. What are you doing? Like, where are you going to collect candy next, right? Like, we know it exists, right? Like, and a lot of us don't even hear it overtly. We just get the message. They're like, well, so what are you doing? Like, are you playing around? Like, what's that about?
Yeah. I think the hat's very much. Some people become a very different person when they put a hat on, and maybe that's one of the reasons why we see so many entertainers wearing hats.
Yes.
On the one hand, they've got a brim to actually stop the lights from the stage, the lights that are coming down the stage to stop them, from squinting or whatever, or being detracted. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's all part of a persona that they build. And they act differently. People act differently when they're wearing a hat. They're bolder. They're more obvious. They're taller in many cases.
Yeah.
And when we think about Stetson Western hats, and we think about, in the UK, we think about people going to a Western music concert or something along those lines. Otherwise, or they're going to ride a horse. Why else would you wear a Western hat? Western style hat. But of course, it's becoming far more acceptable to wear anything. I mean, look, you see some of the sites that go around in London, and that includes Ian and myself, by the way.
Right.
It's hardly suspecting that that people are opening up a bit more to this type of thing. But it is interesting because I digress very quickly, but I was looking at some of the stats from my YouTube channel, and something like 49% of my viewers are from America, and that was quite a surprise, nice surprise, because the numbers are going up, and it's really nice that I can converse with them. But what's happening in the UK? It's like 12% or something of my audience is based in the UK, and I was taken aback by that, to be honest. I was quite surprised. Anyway, sorry to digress, but yeah.
Well, no,
as you can see, I've got the Blues Brothers bit on stage.
I love it. Well, like I said, it wasn't lost on me. I was actually waiting for you to discuss the hat. Like, if anything you want to share with our audience in terms of that specific hat. I don't think I've seen that one on you before, but please.
This is a FEPSA felt. It's 100% beaver. It's one that when my father passed, I spent some time and I made it for his funeral, and it's just been one of those hats that I'll probably never sell. I may do, I don't know, but it meant a lot to me at the time, and yeah. So it's just a very small, short brim, as you can see there. I think it's about 5.5 centimeters. So not. It's just on the edge of being between a trilby and a fedora. But where I've got such wide frame in my body, if I go much smaller than this, it looks a little bit ridiculous. But there's a 38 mil, I think it is. A quick look, 38 mil gross grain on there, and I suit the teardrops a lot more because my head is of a certain shape that I can get away with a straight crease or a diamond or something. But you know what? I just really like the look and feel of the teardrop. It's very current and just a nice hat. And this one is only about 10 centimeters here, so it's a very traditional approach in its design, as you can see. But it's just one of those hats you just think, that's a really nice sort of go-to hat to wear with a suit or an overcoat. It comes across really well. But and the other one you can see here. Oh, thank you very much for that, Luke. I promised you, and I'll tell me when you want me to go through the FEPSA story, and I'll tell you some of the. I got some
go through it.
Things to show.
The floor is yours, my friend.
I said to you all that I placed an order with FEPSA, and it's taken, I think, just under 8 days to get the order processed, picked, packed, dispatched, and delivered here in the UK, which I think is marvelous. No hold-ups at customs. Excuse me, and I just pay the VAT, and actually, do you know what? They don't even invoice me the VAT until I actually got the stock in my hands. So there we go.
Okay, great.
So it turns up in a very nice sort of cardboard box, as you'd expect. But then there is a beautiful FEPSA bag. It's pretty neat, isn't it? I've got several of these, but they're like disposable bags, but they're not. You do your best to keep them actually, because they're very nice. And then what you get is a whole stack of felts. So I ordered about 20 felts. So these are various. They're anything between 110 and 220 weight, but they literally come stacked up like this, with labels on them, and nothing more than that. I mean, it's amazing, really. But some of the colours that are there are really just very nice. There's browns and beiges, and we're very, as I said before, stayed in our colours here in the UK. But that's quite a nice sort of chestnutty colour. I don't think you can see that very well because of the light here, but that's a chestnutty colour. But they're all some of them are actually already stiffened. Some of them are very soft, like this is very soft. So for me to do anything with this, I will have to put shellac on it, to make it into a matte hat. But this one, for instance, is very, very tough. That's
you can hear that.
200% weight. That's a 4X 100% rabbit fur felt hat. And what happens is they grade them with the size of the height of the crown here, and also the circumference around the actual setting here. So really, you're supposed to look at this and think what size hat you're going to make. But what I do is I actually buy a whole selection of different sizes of these, so that and even the small ones will stretch out to a 60 or 61 if you wanted them to. So awesome. It's as straightforward as that. And in fact, earlier on in the week, I made this hat from one of the felts yesterday. And
that's gorgeous.
This is a 150 felt. It's very much like the Borsellino, isn't it? And that's a no-no, by the way. Shouldn't do that. But I think that's quite a nice hat.
Very beautiful. Yeah, I love that country.
It's obviously a fedora with a 7 centimeter brim and a 12 centimeter crown. So not the full 5-inch or 13 centimeters that sometimes I go for and clients go for. But I just thought, I looked at this and I thought, you know what, this is very much like the Johnny Depp type look that I could achieve with the sort of matching. I really love how the gross grain matches with the just a slight color contrast with the felt. So all good there. And I really like the Fern Thatcher American 2-inch leather sweatbands that I've been putting in.
Yeah.
They are super comfortable. They really are. And I would really say to anybody, try a hat with a bigger leather sweatband, because the smaller ones are great, don't get me wrong, but with the bigger one, it just seems to be that little bit more comfortable.
It seems structurally sound, like a more. It's almost like the foundation, right? I mean, again, I know nothing. Yeah, it just seems like the hat's less likely to collapse on you, and again, unless that's what you want, right? Some people love the idea of the crushable hat, but other folks admire kind of like that. Like, I want that shape to stay. It feels like the leather sweatband. The wider you have, the more of a foundation you have to keep that shape that you want.
Yeah, and there's one last thing, but this is a bit of fun, really. I'll show you.
Do it.
This is a package that arrived today, and it's a second-hand hat that I bought. And you know, there's a piece of paperwork, and look at the state of that. I mean, come on, guys, look at the state of that.
Wow.
I mean, this is what we put up with in the UK. Okay, so this has been described as a good quality hat in great. I mean, you know, it is fur felt, but I'm going to have to do some real sort of repair work on this one. But just goes to show you, it's not only in the US that this turns up like that.
Yeah. Wow, Paul. Like that. What a before, right? And then it begs the question: what does a bad quality hat look to you? Like this is one of the good ones. You know what I mean? And you're like, well, wow. You know. And the thing is, I know the beautiful part of this is that you're gonna go and you're gonna work your magic on the hat, and it's not even gonna look like the same hat. And that really is the art.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to look at that one, probably take off the leather sweatband and make it bigger so that it will have greater appeal to more people. And the final one that turned up this week was, do you remember, you've got one of these put aside? It's the Nutura. Do you remember the Nutura one? This is a size 57. And I haven't yet brushed this one up or cleaned it or anything, but this arrived this week. And just very quickly, the Nutura is very much like a sustainable type of beaver felt, for people that don't know. And it's made of there's a rodent down in South America that gives up his felt for this material, and it's a very underrated material. It's a super soft hat, it really is. And it's this was made by a company called Lagoracino, and apparently they did import a few of these to the UK. But I guess people didn't really understand what Nutura was, and I get that, because frankly I didn't know what it was until I did some research and started looking into it. So that's just a selection of what's sort of turned up this week and what we're working on. Yeah,
no, that's great, Paul. And that actually reminds me, you know, so here's the way I'm kind of thinking. This might have been a conversation for offline, but we're online now, so let's just do it now. But I might just hold off on having you ship those. I think we have to 3 now and I'll go pick up those personally when I get to the UK.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
So this will give me another reason to come over there. I'm like, well, I got to pick up the hats because, you know, we can't count on the postal system to kind of do their job. That's absolutely wrong. This is just me rationalizing a trip to the UK to pick up the hats.
Yeah,
you know, and I'm hanging out with Paul and Ian and whoever else happens to be around.
It'll be good. I mean, that's fine. No problem at all. Yeah.
So I'll do that, and then again, I don't know. We'll work out. So as you know, I think you already said that you had you've made progress on figuring out like dates. Once those are more firmed up, I will go and I will do my best to figure out like when I can make that happen. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, maybe I'll come after that event and you guys can tell me all about it, or I'll go before that and then we can kind of talk about what you guys are planning to do. Either way, we'll figure it out, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think Ian and I are very flexible, so I'll talk to Ian, and then and if anybody else wants to join us, then we'd love to. We'd love anybody to come along, because it's just a nice few hours. I mean, I think we spent about 5 hours together, maybe even more than that. It was it was just fun, to be honest.
Yeah, and like I said, London is one of those places that you're like, oh, I'm gonna get there, and then like when the universe tells you this is the good time to do it, well, you just follow suit, right? You know, and then I get to get some hats. I'm like, what's not to like?
Yeah.
You know, and maybe we'll go live. I mean, I don't know. You know, I want to be respectful of folks around. I know we talked about potentially collaborating. I'm open to that. I'll try to bring my equipment. You know, I don't have the nice thing is I've done this once already with Steve Goldstein and Morgan over in Brooklyn, you know, and I'm like, well, we'll try. Like I said, I do things very extemporaneously. Usually there's not a whole lot, super amount of planning involved. But it usually ends up okay, only because I think everybody is used to like me speaking off the cuff, you know, and I never claim that I'm a super polished show here. Like that's not what it's about. Honestly, it's the anti-polish, you know?
Yeah.
I just keep it organic.
Yeah.
So we'll riff and we'll keep it going. But I'm very excited about that idea. You know, like right now, tomorrow is November already. So it's gonna be here before you know it. So
it is, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So Paul, you know, we got this movie here, and I don't know. I think I saw a message from Robert. Hopefully Robertson, if he's trying to get on here, I just want to make sure that I'm not like ignoring if he needs help. It says the black stingy brim, associated 1960s in general, and the Sinatra Rat Pack more particularly. Muddy did not seem to wear hats at all. Okay, so he's talking about the movie. So Robert Galt is replying in the Facebook, you know, and sorry for that. I know that's something that Josh has done. For me, like I'm very weary. Robert, thank you for the comments. I'm not going to read all that because one, it's a little harder for me to read with these shades on. So I'm going to keep the shades on. But Robert, I will address your comment in the Facebook board of directors group. But he did make a comment about the movie, which is, I mean, really, wow, what a perfect movie to discuss the idea of having fun, right? The idea of authenticity, right? So, I mean, some of you guys that are my Facebook friends know that I've written an article. I published that, I believe it was either earlier in the month or maybe the end of last month. And it was done to coincide with Hispanic Heritage Month, but it wasn't just about being Hispanic, right? So that obviously is one of the many hats that I wear, is somebody that's a member of the Hispanic community or the Latino community, however you refer to folks of my background. But really, it's about authenticity. That's the crux, and that's regardless of what you are, right? In terms of your background, what you believe in, your political beliefs, everything, right? That whole package that makes you who you are. The idea behind it was organizations would be very well served if they would create an environment to the degree possible, right? So if you know, you're somebody that identifies as a neo-Nazi, I could understand a lot of organizations saying, you know what, could you not, could you like keep that private, right? There are a lot of things that are politically charged that organizations will say, no, we can't do that, right? Because it might infringe on the workplace or the safety, perceptions of safety of our fellow employees. That's not what I'm talking about, right? Right? We talked about, it's like, it gets into the notion of free speech, right? I believe in free speech, but I also believe that you should not be allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater, especially if there's no fire, right? Right? I mean, I think if there is a fire, then you should yell fire. That's not the point. The point here is, to the degree possible, organizations should, right? So if Luke wants to, share some food from his culture with his employees, well, why not allow that, right? Unless like it's something where it's somebody else says, what are you doing? That's an affront to me. I doubt that they're going to say that, you know what I mean? So creating a safe space so that people, right? The people, because that's what employees are. They're people first. Before they're employees, they're people. to allow them to express themselves, right, and to show a little bit of their identity, because that's what makes them who they are, right? Who knows if the fact that, let's say, I came from a Latino background, maybe that's what makes me a great employee, right? Like, you don't know. And maybe that's something that I can share, and somebody else that doesn't come from that background, they could be like, yeah, I get that. Or I know exactly what you mean, Luke. I come from Italy, right? I get that all the time, right? If you see my Facebook friends, well, first of all, I have Italian family, right? It's just my adopted family. They come from Sicily. So like, it's a perfect like, you know what I mean? Like, when somebody that says I come from Italy and I know exactly what you mean, it's not like I'm right. Like, for me, it's like, oh boy, I didn't see that coming. I knew that coming. Like, I know folks from Italy. I know folks from Poland. I know folks from, man, so many other countries. And right, family, there's very few things that family and the idea of the concept of food and family, right, and tradition, those concepts are not lost on just about anybody, right? So there's the universality, right? So if I had to come up with an acronym for Luke, the word Luke, right, for the name Luke, love and universality, right? Those are the two that I would probably put as L and U. I don't think about K and E, but LU, right? We talked about LL Cool J, ladies love Cool James, right? Maybe that's what I do. K would be cool for with a K, because it's different. But the idea is universality, right? There's a reason why I wear pi, right? Because it's a mathematical symbol, right? So no matter what language you speak at home, you understand mathematics, and I mean, hopefully you do. But it's taught everywhere, because math, just like music, right? Those two are thought of as the universal languages that are spoken throughout the whole world. And I think that this movie, right, is also hitting on one of the other universals, is the inclination to want to have fun, right? So music is involved, right? There's definitely music, there's style, right? Everybody has style. Even if you don't think you have style, you have a style. It might just be a conservative style, but you have a style. So music, style, and then the idea of fun. Grown people having fun. And a lot of it will involve music, it'll involve food, right? But these things are so like they permeate, right? They're the things that, right? If there was a secret to world peace, right? We know that, well, for a lot of folks, it's money, right? Like, that's a given, right? You don't need to go and listen to a music program and like talk and see all the relationships that countries have, the allies that they build, and they usually revolve around money, right? Financial, right? And I get that. But beyond that, there's kind of the idea of music, right? Sport, right? The idea of competition. That's why the Olympics is so it's so compelling to everybody, right? The idea is, hey, we're different, but what do we have in common? Once we know that we have something in common as human beings, right? That's the secret for us getting to the table and talking and getting beyond all of our differences. And remember the ebony and ivory? The great hat that Paul released a video about, which, hopefully you guys have seen. If not, it's about creating this hat. Do you see a commonality in this hat, in this uniform, black and white? Like, I don't know. I can't, like, again, I could be really projecting here, and that's fine, because I'm a human being. I will project my own, right? You are all in this channel. If you've been watching for any decent amount of time, you've probably only had to see 2 or 3 shows, and I know the kind of guy Luke is. Like, at least a little bit about this guy. And that's what I'm sharing with you, right? So the way I think is about everything that I have on me and I choose to wear and I choose to represent, right? My love for the color red, you know what I mean? Like, we talk about these things, right? Because red means so much, but black and white, right? The idea is, well, it's universal, and I can't help but think that it wasn't, right? I want to think that John Landis Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, and all the other folks that were involved in the creation of this movie, that it wasn't lost on. Like, what would it, right? Obviously, it's a blues outfit, right? So there's speaking to that community, but the idea of black and white is, yeah, we love jazz music, which is known as, you know, music that's created by African Americans, right? It's a very American music, but we're white. And you got to think that the fact that there's two of them, right? There's two brothers, right? Everybody knows that in the African American community, they refer to themselves as brothers. Hey, you're a brother. So John Belushi could not sit there, right? Because this was a John Belushi thing. Like, right? You had to know who John Belushi was in the 1980s and the late 70s. He was the it guy, right? Dan Aykroyd, yes, but they were on Saturday Night Live, and everybody loved John Belushi. Everybody loved John Belushi. Even if you hated John Belushi, you're like, oh, I gotta respect that guy because he made you laugh just by looking at you. And John Belushi, at least either himself or the people around him, said, you cannot go up there as the blues brother because, well, then maybe the African American community might have a feeling about that. This guy's calling himself a brother. He's not a brother. Now, when you got Dan Aykroyd there, oh, we got the Blues Brothers. They're brothers. It's the Blues Brothers, meaning Jake Blues, Joliet Jake Blues, and Elwood Blues. Oh, I get it. And now you already broke. There's no controversy. Nobody can get canceled, right? Like we know, like right now, right? Social media back then did not exist, right? You had like news, you had the National Enquirer and other folks that stirred the pot. But now, imagine if John Belushi would try to come out now, right? Like obviously if he's no longer with us, but if he tried to propose himself as the Blues Brother, might not get as much, you know what I mean? But I feel like he was ahead of his time, or the people around him were ahead of their time and said, listen, we can't do that. Like we respect this community. We want to make sure that we're respectful. And they pulled it off so wonderfully. Like because they were white, they introduced a lot of folks to jazz and those artists that were like, right? And again, when I say introduce, like James Brown is in here. Like there's no way somebody told me, oh yeah, I learned about James Brown from the Blues Brothers. That seems a little weird, right? But there was a lot of folks that would probably have never given James Brown the time of day if it was not for the Blues Brothers or Cab Calloway, right? So it's kind of like, hey, if it's good enough for Jake and Elwood, it's good enough for me. And this is the same way I operate here on the channel, right? There are a lot of folks that will look at a guy like Luke and say, that guy, there's something about him. But maybe they'll see Paul, right? They'll see Paul and they say, well, that guy's got like, that guy I can get behind. So I'm like, well, I'm going to have my brother, right, from across the pond here, right? He knows that what I'm about. He vouches for me. So I'm like, okay, if Paul's okay with this guy, then Luke is all right. You know, maybe I wish he stopped talking so much and let the other smart guy talk. But you know, fine. Or Robert, right? Like that's the idea behind all of this. Or Morgan. I mentioned that literally during the show when Morgan was on. There are folks, because of how old I am and how old Paul is or how old Robert is, and all the other catters, right? Josh is on the younger side, but Morgan's 19. Like there are kids out there that are like, I don't understand you, man. Like you're old. You're obviously old. You can see the grays. I got nothing. But when they see Morgan, they're like, holy cow. First of all, like you seem like you got it together. Like when you hear Morgan talk, you're like, as a 19-year-old, if I'm in high school, even if I'm like 20-something years old, somebody might look at Morgan and say, he knows what she's talking about. And she kind of looks like me, right? She might, you know, be from a certain background, similar background, whatever it is, these are levers, right? I don't just talk about that stuff. I do it. You know what I mean? I know that there are folks that I can't pull that lever because I don't have the ability to pull that lever. Maybe if they're coming from a Latino background, I could pull that lever. If they're coming from a New York background, I could pull that lever. Just urban, I could pull that lever. But maybe that lever doesn't work in the UK. Maybe it doesn't work in Australia. Maybe it doesn't work on the West Coast where my man Brian Forbes lives, right? Like, what, New York? No. It's all about the West Coast, right? We know about that. And I respect that. I grew up listening to a lot of West Coast music, but I can't speak about what it's like to live on the West Coast and to be in LA and know about LA politics, about all the politics that are involved in LA, because there are politics, street politics, right? You know, I'm somebody that comes from an urban background, and I know about street politics, but I don't know what the politics are in the West Coast. But maybe my man Brian Forbes, who lives out there, right? He also knows about country culture. He's from North Carolina, right? He also listens to reggae music, which I don't, right? I like reggae music. I'm not an expert, but he can speak to that. You see why the point of why having, right, that it's not just Luke here talking is so important. And speaking of which, let me take my own advice. Let me make sure that Paul has a word in edgewise.
Goodness me. I was just listening and taking it all in, to be honest with you, Luke, and just thinking about what you were saying and the implications of it. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're just trying to get everybody to get on with everybody else in a world where there's so many troubles. And, you know, we've got a lot of controversy in the royal family, and we've got lots of issues around our economy over here in the UK at the moment. And it's just nice to, you know, to review a film, to look at something on Netflix, to discuss a hobby, to talk about some new developments in products and stuff, to take yourself away. It comes back to this, you know, in your daily life, you're this person, but then when you turn the television on, you become this other person watching the television, and you actually become part of that. When the Blues Brothers is on, you feel part of it. How many people sat there with a black hat on and a pair of shades, or just thought about being part of that? Probably not many, but you know what I mean? Maybe in their mind, they're sat there with a black hat on and becoming part of them, or thinking, well, how cool do those guys look? You know, it's not real, but, you know, I wouldn't mind looking like that, sort of thing. So, I mean, as we've said before, over in the UK, we're a lot more conservative, and it's very difficult for people like myself and others that are on the edge, if you like, of an industry such as hatting, to have an influence sufficient enough to change the marketplace to look towards lighter colors of hats, for instance. But it's very nice to be able to create a gallery of ideas, and you know, it's what it's like. You go into a shop and you see this beautiful suit that's on the mannequin in the window, and it's sort of this lovely sort of blue color. I think, man, that looks really good. You go in there, and that's not the color you end up buying because it's perhaps a little bit too edgy for you. You go to something that's maybe a darker blue or a gray even, but it's got you into that shop. And that's really, you know, what the Blues Brothers are doing, I guess, is to get you into their type of their type of lifestyle and film and collective as brothers and so on, with the way they look.
And that's the thing. The thing about it is, right, like, obviously, you got two brothers here that are, right? So by all intents and purposes, they're blood brothers, right? I don't know if they go into that fact. They're orphans. Really, they have each other, right? And they empower each other, right? So one is Joliet Jake, who's, right, he comes out of prison. That's the first thing that you see of Jake. He's not wearing his uniform. He is in prison. So now you're already like, okay, this guy, right? I already know something about this guy. He's not somebody that's used to playing by rules. You got his brother, right? Who's go there and picking him up. And he's like, you know what I mean? Like, there's two energies here, right? So I'm regardless of how you feel about gender, right? I think of it more like energy, right? There's like a masculine energy, which Joliet Jake represents. And then there's kind of more of a feminine energy. And I don't mean that negatively towards Elwood, right? But if you guys have brothers, right? You know, I have lots of brothers, you know, and some of them are, right? I only have one brother that's actually has the same dad and mom as I do. He's a younger brother, right? And he would actually, if I could get him, he wears baseball caps. If I could get him to wear a fedora outfit with me, he'd be a great Elwood, you know, because he's actually a little taller than me. He's a lot more slender. But yeah, But the idea is, right, that sometimes, right, in our desire to want to differentiate ourselves from our brothers, sometimes you gravitate towards one parent more than another. And I saw that in Jake and Elwood, because from Jake, I got this very brash, masculine energy, right? And from Elwood, I'm like, wow, Elwood seems to be like the caregiver. I mean, he's the one that's always like the moral, in terms of morality. Elwood is the one that's looking out there and like, right, obviously picking up. It's almost like he's picking up Jake, almost like if he were picking up his child at school. He's like, well, my brother Jake is in jail again. Let me go pick him up. And we get that. Like, I know from all the brothers I have, I could tell you which ones are more have that more masculine. They're all like men, right? Like, I'm not trying, again, to intimate that they're you know, that they're not men. But the idea is who brought them up and who they role model themselves after, right? If you're somebody like Jake, you're like, okay, right? They're two orphans. Jake was kind of like, he patterned himself after people, right? Maybe they were shady figures on the street corner. You could tell that Jake was looking at those guys that were on the street and said, I'm going to do that. Like, nobody's going to mess with me. Elwood probably gravitated to maybe towards the nuns, right? They grew up in an orphanage, and the nuns, right, were kind of like mother figures, right? Right, but not his mother. He's like, wow, you could tell that Elwood was the one that was saying, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Very respectful and like very like just the gentleman, right? He's the gentleman. They'll both they'll both beat you up to kind of protect each other, right? They both got the protection. But Jake is the one that's like, well, I may cut you. I may have to take you out. Elwood would be like, well, I'm just going to make sure that you're not messing with my brother. And then I'm going to walk away because I don't want to hurt anybody. It's such a beautiful energy and like the collaboration. I don't know in terms of like the history between Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi. So I don't proclaim to be an expert, well, in anything. And let alone the relationship between these two actors, right? They're kind of comedians first, right? They became actors, but it's such a beautiful, like a play, like a yin and yang. Yeah, Yankees Buddha said, whoa, snazzy Luke and Paul. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it, Yankees Buddha. I don't think I've seen you here before, but welcome. We're just talking about this movie because, I have a bunch of photos and I'm not going to like show because I really want to, like, for me, like sometimes the photos can be too much. Although I know it's useful. So I won't like not show photos, but like it just, like this could be 3 shows, to be honest, right? Like I could probably teach a course just on the Blues Brothers. And the one thing, all right, I want to hit back on is the idea of authenticity and universality, right? With this movie, what do you see the Blues Brothers like, right? They are in like every situation imaginable, right? It's kind of like Blues Brothers. Hey, Morgan, how you doing, Morgan? Welcome. We were talking about you. All good. So but you knew that. So yeah, welcome, Morgan. Yeah, hey, Luke, Paul, and Josh. I love it, Morgan. I cannot wait to hang out with you again, Morgan. And I'm coming next week. I believe. I don't know what day I'm showing up, but I'll let you know. Now that we have like each other's contact information. Yeah, of course Morgan. But like you said, I never like to leave things to chance. Like my OCD sometimes kicks in. I'm like, just so Morgan doesn't have like the wrong idea. It's like I wouldn't talk bad about anybody, let alone Morgan. There's nothing bad to talk about. But yeah, yes, let me know. Absolutely. Like I said, and apparently after that trip I made to New York, there were several folks that like said, hey, I wish you would have let me know. I was like, well, I didn't know you were in New York. You know what I mean? Like I know now, and I Facebook friended those folks, and I said, listen, if we want to get together, like and hopefully we get all of us together, Steve, Kevin, myself, Morgan, James, and Bill. I believe I got those, like the New York crowd, and I'll go and I'll hang out with you guys because, well, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I want to hang out with hat nerds, right? Like I'm already in probably hat mecca, right? It's like, even, that's debatable. Some people say, no, Luke, Hat Mecca Hat Mecca is Danbury, Connecticut, right? And that's true, right? But if you study hat history in the US, you would know that Danbury, Connecticut is really like, it's the hat land, right? It's like the motherland. But, right, New York is basically, right, in terms of the empire, New York is representative of the very latest and greatest that the U.S. has to offer, right? I know L.A., Miami, and all the other cities count too. I'm not trying to discount them, but New York, for a lot of folks, is the apex of the U.S. Like, right? Like New York, New York. You can make it there. You can make it anywhere. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that because, like I said, I know that folks might have different opinions. That's not what I'm intending. But of course you can join us, Morgan. You don't need permission. Yeah, don't worry about it. This is really a discussion. Like, I have photos, but I really want to have a discussion about what this movie, like, for the folks that have seen it, right? You may not have seen it this week. I've seen it. Wow, I've seen it so often, and I did rewatch. You guys know my process. I will rewatch the movie just so I can kind of come up with fresh ideas, because my brain is very twitchy. Like, I could watch the same movie 5 times and come up with 5 different perceptions, right? They might all be, this movie's great, but I come at it from this angle, then this angle, angle, and I triangulate, right? That's kind of like the way I go. I go like this, and then you're like in the very center, you get like Luke's perception, but I speak the way I think and the way I communicate and the way I present. Like, it's all over the place. You go here, and then, but right in the center, you capture the gist. Paul's laughing because I think I'm a little bit self-aware that way. And that's endearing to some folks, you know what I mean? Like, it's endearing to me. Let me be honest. Like, for those folks that like know, right? Because we know that as human beings, we tend to be self-deceptive sometimes, and right, and sometimes it's useful, right? It's useful not to think of yourself as anything but somebody that's very moral, somebody that's very right, very honest, very knowledgeable, right? We all know about the guys, right? The guys that think that they know everything. Like, they don't think it. They want to propose that to the outer world, that, hey, I ate all, you see the brains in the world, I ate all of them, right? He's like, Einstein, yeah, that guy was okay. I'm definitely smarter. And we do that with our children. We even do it with our children. It's kind of like a backhanded compliment, right? It's like, if anybody's ever worked in a toy store, you will inevitably go and you will find a parent that will come up to you and say, I have a 3-year-old. Wait, he's not an ordinary 3-year-old. He's probably the smartest 3-year-old that ever lived, right? So, like, and he's like, yeah, we have some baby Einstein toys. Yeah, he's like, but he's smarter than Einstein. Do you have anything more advanced? And they do that, and obviously nobody calls them out on it, right? But in many ways, they're kind of self-complimenting, right? When I talked about my son, right, and I talk about these things, it doesn't mean that I'm not above them, right? You heard me talk about my son, right? Why would you talk about my son? I mean, why would you come here and watch me if you can go and listen to my much more entertaining, much smarter, and much more handsome son? Like, just because I know this stuff happens doesn't mean I'm above it, right? Like, I do this because, well, one, it's a nice thing, right? We tend to make sure that we have that kind of push and pull with our kids, right? Sometimes, like, we're in private, we will dress them down, right? We will go and say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. But in public, right? And this is a very, like, for those folks out there that are supervisors, right? I work with public safety, with police officers. And a lot of them would say, praise in public, criticize in private. They will repeat it because I used to develop tests for them, right? And they will always repeat that. And I love that, because I know a lot of officers will repeat it because they know that's what they're supposed to say. But for those folks that actually live it, if you ever had anybody in your charge that you don't want to dress them down in public. You don't want to do it. You want to do it in private. Now, again, and maybe you don't want to dress them down. Maybe you want to use a certain tact with them, right? But the idea is, I'm not here to embarrass you, because that's a good way for you to for you to hate me as a supervisor or as a potential mentor. And it's also a good way for no learning to take place, right? So I do this because, again, I have over 20 years of experience like out in the corporate world. And these are the things that I've learned. Some of it I learned the hard way. You know, I obviously nobody starts off as a supervisor. Maybe some people do. I didn't. I became a supervisor. And honestly, I think I did a really bad job. I think I got that job before I was ready for that job. Right. So I made those corrections, right? That's part of my career journey, also part of my person journey, right? My life journey, that I identified those weaknesses, and then now I've been slowly shoring them up. And I do it with like material, right? I do it with this channel, right? And how I treat Paul, and how I treat Robert, and how I treat Morgan. Like I do this because, one, it creates predictability for me, right? So when I treat the world with respect, usually, not all the time, but usually the world treats me with respect, right? And that's, again, there's never a bad way to, it's almost never bad to have manners. And part of having manners is putting somebody else ahead of yourself. And again, that's why I love Paul, because Paul, I think, really is great at doing that. And it tells me a lot about it tells me a lot about the UK. And it also tells me something more about than the UK. It tells me something about Robert's family and the type of family that he grew up in. Robert never mentioned anything about his parents, at least that I can recall. He's talked about his son, but not a lot. But I already know the type of son that Paul is, or was, however what he is, and the type of like husband that he is, as well as the type of father that he is, based on how he carries himself, right? In public. Because again, a lot of people, there's such a thing about like authenticity, right? Some people are like, that person's fake. I'm like, well, wait a minute now, you don't know that, right? Do you know that for sure? Right? Because some people, they see people with good manners and they're like, well, why are you not being real with me? I'm like, well, I am. But if you don't want to believe that, that says more about you than me. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, that people sometimes, right, there's a very physical relationship, some weird relationship that people have with mirrors, right? You ever notice that, Paul? Like some people, they don't want to see themselves in a mirror. I've met them. I've interacted with folks like that.
Yeah. I think also people taking photographs of other people. You know, they say, that's never me. That's never me. I guess we all suffer from, we see ourselves differently in our minds than we do in the mirror, or in what, frankly, is reality. You know, we've either, we've all done it. I mean, I know, I stopped exercising a bit recently and put a bit of weight on, and look in the mirror and think, that's not me. And of course, it is me. But the reality is, I need to get back out there and work, and get some exercise in. So I think you're right.
And so the reason why, is to make an analogy, is that just like a physical mirror, other people are also mirrors of you, right? Mm-hmm. So in interacting with somebody will show you, even without intentionally telling you, right? They will show you the type of person that you are. And sometimes some people, they gravitate towards that, but other people, they shy away from it. Meaning, I don't want to talk to another person because I think that the mirror that other people represent for them, it turns them off. Almost like a physical mirror, that personal mirror turns them off. And I don't know, I'm kind of like going around, very twitchy. These are the ideas. I didn't plan to talk about this. This is literally what's coming into my mind. But it's very important, almost in many ways, more important than the film, right? This film is a piece of art, right? It may not be the highest level of art, but right, the art is what you make of it, right? Some people could look at Paul's hat here and say, that's not art. I was like, it is to me, so it is, right? So it's like, I don't care what well, I do care what you think, but it's kind of like, regardless of what you think, it is art, right? If you say it's art, it's art. And Morgan just joined. Speaking of
Hey,
another artist.
I can't hear for now. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries. It's probably,
yeah.
I think this is only the second time we had Morgan on here, so that's really a treat.
I'll come right back.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
No worries, Morgan.
You
Like I
guys-
said, it's all good. Like I said, we'll work on you know, if there's anything that I can opine. Like I had to do some research about like my my setup, right? And Morgan was actually the person that helped me do some of that, right? With StreamYard, Morgan was the person that recommended the software. I think it's worked a lot better for me. So these are the reasons why I love interacting with all you guys, because you guys all come like, who am I to like, again, I'm almost 50. Morgan's 19. I know how a lot of people perceive 19-year-olds. They're like, what can I learn from a 19-year-old? Same like they'll say, what can I learn from a 9-year-old? I'm like, well, this software that I have would not be here. Like I wouldn't be using it if it wasn't for this 19-year-old. So it's kind of like, this is why I try to like, again, regardless of your situation, I try to collaborate and I try to build a community here because, well, one, I benefit from it, right? Like I already have benefit from it. I got great hats from Paul. I got great advice from Paul. Morgan's helped me out tremendously. Ian, oh my gosh. Ian is like, wow, what can you say about Ian other than if you've seen this channel, you guys already know. And then Josh and Robert, Brian, all you guys that have been part of this channel, Steve Heck, Steve Goldstein, all of you guys have helped me out so tremendously. Probably in many ways that you guys don't even realize, because again, I come away from these streams like saying, hey, wow, I'm a better person. Like I feel like I'm a better person. I'm exhausted, but I had fun, and I feel like I'm a better person after having had this discussion. It's almost like catharsis, you know. Like I feel like I got something off my chest, and then you know what? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take that and then try to apply it at home. I'm going to try to apply it with my son when I interact with him. I'm going to apply it with my parents, right? My parents are still alive. I'll go visit them, you know, next week, and I'll have dinner, right? I'll do the whole family thing because, well, what else is there, right? If I don't have my family, right? There's really not a whole lot that I have then, right? Other than myself and maybe, you know, right? You're not the collection, right? You're not your collection. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing I always want. I mentioned before early on, and I want to reiterate: you're not your hat collection. You are not the number of digits you have in your bank account. Like that's not who you are. If that is who you are in terms of how you view yourself, then you're gonna get disappointed. You're gonna get disappointed with life because what's gonna happen, right? If your whole self-esteem is revolving around how many hats you have or how much money you have. Well, what happens when you go and you meet somebody with more money or more hats? Are you gonna feel like you're down, like you're a loser? Right? This is my favorite. Like, okay, you guys don't know that I'm a big fan of rap music. I'm also a big fan of boxing. And I think I might have mentioned this story. But right, so Jay-Z is the guy that I admire, right? He happens to be the first billionaire in hip hop music. So he grew up not too far from where I grew up. So his real name is Sean Carter. Jay-Z is a very, very wealthy man. Another person in boxing world is Floyd Money Mayweather. Floyd Money Mayweather. And well, you can imagine, right? He started off as Pretty Boy Floyd, but then when he started getting like bigger boxing purses, right? We lost Ricky Hatton. Shout out to Ricky Hatton, icon, an icon in boxing, and you know, somebody that I didn't expect to see that happening, but it happens to a lot of boxers. Morgan, Morgan's back. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, excellent, awesome.
Nice
Morgan,
to meet you, Morgan.
how's the new digs?
Oh, it's great. It's actually really great. As you can see, there's still a bunch of boxes and everything. I have boxes right here as well, but
yeah.
I was not going to let that stop me from coming up here and saying hello to everybody and joining the show.
Hey, Morgan, you are, like I said, I was just when you were having the technical difficulties, and you know, I always kind of, because again, you guys are part of my life now, right? there's no way I could sit there and like do justice to everything, like, you know. And Morgan, you had a really big impact on my life. And I'm glad that you take the time out, you know, to do that, because, you know, like I said, you could be doing so many other things. I know you do. You're very busy. I know that a lot of times. So like, this is the thing that Morgan has explained. When she's not on here, it's because, well, she's exhausted. She got classes. She's got a new place, right? So Morgan's now in her very own place. These are things that if you know, right? So if you guys think back to when you got your very first place of your own, you guys know how big that was, right? Like nobody's there to tell you, you know, you got to come home this time. You gotta do this, right? You have to do it yourself, or you suffer the consequence.
Yeah,
it's big, it's huge. So we celebrate you, Morgan.
Cool.
I think we lost Morgan really quickly, but she'll be back. But yeah, back to the main crux. Hey, there we go.
Sorry, I don't know how me fixing my mic.
No worries, no worries.
My mic kicked me out. That's very rude of the mic.
No worries,
Mike.
Morgan, you know what's funny is that we were just talking about a situation here, like, right? So you're not your hat collection. You're not the amount of digits you have in your bank account. You know, when we did this show over at Steve's, what was it, 2 weeks? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was less. I'm sorry,
Probably
my timing.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, like let's just say 2 weeks ago. And catch that show. I thought that was like, it was probably one of my shorter shows, but I thought it was one of my best shows. You know, and it's not my show, it's our show. And honestly, I think one of the things that always stuck in my mind about that, so a lot of things stuck in my mind, Morgan. But when you were giving like the financial advice to folks out there, wow, you kind of blew and I think I even said it, you blew my mind with that. And you literally did. It wasn't blowing smoke, because again, as an older guy, right? And Paul knows this, right? Like Paul, myself, Robert, like I said, Robert said he doesn't have any kids, but Robert deals with kids. Robert is like a baseball coach. You guys know when you talk to kids, right? I have nephews. You guys all met my nephew, right? He was on here, right? My nephew happens to spend a lot of money on his fragrances, and I can't knock him, but I try to give him good advice about that. You know, I'm like, listen, nephew, make sure that you're not just spending your whole paycheck on your fragrances, right? Because, well, you eventually want to retire, right? You eventually want to, right? There's a point when all of us, right? Morgan's 19, but myself, Paul, we're a little closer to that point where we can no longer trade our time for money, right? When there's at some point where you can't physically work. So that's why you set aside a portion of the money that you have. And the sooner you start, so if you're Morgan's age, you got the biggest asset, right? Which is time. You have the ability to allow your money to work for you. And again, I do this because I go into dad mode really quickly. You guys, right? Like Paul is kind of like my dad, my uncle, you know, my brother, and sometimes my son. If I feel but Paul, I don't ever feel like dad around Paul, not because of the age, but because Paul seems to have it. Like, there's nothing I can tell Paul that he doesn't already know. But I've done it to other people. I've done it with my parents. Right? Sometimes when you get to the point, your parents start making things, and it could be age, it could be a variety of things, where you have to take care of them. Because they're like, wow, you guys raised me. You guys should know better, right? But I'll do it. And sometimes I'll have to raise my voice with my mom, because my mom, that's her style, right? Her style is she'll raise her voice. And I'm like, you can't beat me on that. Like, I got a voice, you know what I mean? I got a voice that could permeate through. They could probably hear me in Washington, D.C. if I really wanted to. Like you guys know, I go 0 to New York, and you can't take that out of me. Like, you know, anybody that's interacted with me in person will know, right? Like this. Like me and Morgan were in a crowded pizza shop 2 weeks ago, and they probably heard me. Like Steve over at Bancraft could have probably still heard me. You know, and that's because my voice goes that way. It's not because I'm angry. It's because I get animated. When I'm really into a discussion, my voice raises because I get excited. Like, remember I talked about Paul? Paul has a very mellow voice. But when Paul was talking about like his day with Ian at Bancraft, Paul's voice elevated because that's excitement. You know, it's like, this is a guy that's having a good time. So I didn't need to hear from Paul that he had a good time. I could hear it. you know?
Mhm.
And the thing about it is, the main thing I want to make sure is you don't want to you want to make sure that, because we were all part of social media, right? You might see the hats that I have, right? You might see the hats that Paul has, the Hubbard that Morgan has, and you're like, wow, I can't do that. Does that mean that that you're less of a hat nerd? No, of course not. You know, the fact is, you can view somebody else's collection regardless of whether you are somebody that likes those hats or not, right? You may look at my snowflake hat and say, that's the gaudiest thing I ever see in my life. And that's cool, that's fine. Maybe you don't tell me that, right? Hopefully you don't like tell me, hey, that's the ugliest thing ever. You know, because it's not polite, you know? At least in my mind, it's not polite. You could just say, I like it, but it's not for me. And that's cool. You're good. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here is the idea of, right, we talked about finances and how the reason why you don't want that, because for some people, money is like the goal, right? I want to make all the money in the world, right? If they're collectors, right? People that save money are collectors, right? It seems odd, but it's the truth, right? Because in their mind, they're like, Luke, why would I spend money on these hats? I collect dollars or pounds or euros, right? And somebody like, and that's the thing, some people will go and they view somebody else's collection, right? Their collection of dollars or currency, and they get down on themselves, right? They're like, holy cow, I look at Warren Buffett and I'm down on myself because I'm only a multimillionaire. That guy's got billions. I'm like, and I'm thinking of that, and I'm like, you got to be a little weird, right? Like, but you know, if you make multi-million, let's say you've amassed a small fortune of $10 million, right? Or 10 million pounds or 10 million euros, whatever your currency of choice. You know what I mean? I'm just going to use the number 10 million. Maybe that's not a lot in certain currencies, but in those currencies, you did something right. You know what I mean? Like, right? Because, well, regardless of how you got it, right? You've kept it. So you did something right. And I'm thinking, I mean, all you could think about is that you don't have more money than Warren Buffett. Like, I don't know. It just seems backwards to me. And that's why I always harp on this stuff, because I don't want somebody coming in here, seeing these hats, maybe seeing Paul's hats, maybe seeing Morgan's Hubbard, and thinking, I can't come here. These guys have like a collection, and how am I going to say, like, that's not what it's about. And it shouldn't be about. If that's what it's about for you, then you need to switch it up, because there will always be somebody with more hats, better hats, more money, like more things, right? If you're a car collector, that's what you think. They'll have better watches than you. They'll do all these things. You cannot have that be part of your identity. And the reason why I bring this up is because those two gentlemen that I mentioned, Jay-Z, who's the first hip hop billionaire, Floyd Mayweather Jr., right? He started off as Pretty Boy Floyd, and then he altered his alter ego became Money Mayweather. And it's a dangerous thing. It's very dangerous to do that. Like I think they navigated it okay. I know Jay-Z did, right? But it's very difficult to navigate that because, well, both of those gentlemen did interviews, right? They met Warren Buffett. And you see it on YouTube. Look up Floyd Mayweather and Warren Buffett. You'll see it. I know for a fact that you can look up Jay-Z and Warren Buffett, and you can see those two gentlemen interact. What happens when a billionaire meets a multi-billionaire? And this is before Jay-Z was only worth $500 million at this point in time, right? But Warren Buffett was probably upwards of 40 billion. Now, how do those two gentlemen interact without ego, right? And I'm looking at Jay-Z, right? Because technically, if all his self-esteem was tied into how much money, and he's nothing if he's not the best, right? He's not the richest. Well, why would Jay-Z meet up with Warren Buffett? Right? You wouldn't do that, right? Because that mirror, you could never break that mirror. Like Warren Buffett, everybody knows that guy is, well, I mean, there are people that are even richer than Warren Buffett, but doesn't matter. Warren Buffett doesn't carry himself as somebody that is tied into how many dollars he has, at least in my mind. And you shouldn't either, right? this is the reason why I look at Warren Buffett, and it's not because of the zeros that he has in his account and his net worth. I look at Warren Buffett is because the way he carries himself and the way he treats other people, right? Again, if you ask Warren Buffett, right, what's the biggest thing that's attributable to your success? He would not say his Columbia education. He would not say his fascination with numbers, right? Because that's part of it. He would say the Dale Carnegie's course, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So if you're watching this and you're a fan of wisdom, read that book or just get the audio book, which is what I do. I have the audio book. I listen to that audio book so many times. There's another one I listen to, but it's a little bit edgier, right? It's kind of like a combination of How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I don't know how you would describe it. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, right? You guys know those two books, right? But it's a book by Robert Greene called 48 Laws of Power, right? I think it's a powerful book, but it pales in comparison to How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? And you know why? Because Warren Buffett says that's important. And I think Warren Buffett is an important person. Again, besides the fact of his money, that's not where I'm saying that. Anyway, I'm going off in the twos. The reason why here is that we're mirrors. That's the main point here. People don't like physical mirrors. They also don't like the mirrors that exist in other people. And you got to get over that, because there will always be somebody that's more handsome, has more money, has more cars, has more hats, better hats. Always, always. You will never be like, again, unless you are at that top, right? There might be somebody out there. I know there's somebody out there that has the most hats and has the most money. I don't care about it, but there is somebody. Unless you're that person, you're going to feel bad about yourself. And I say that because of social media, right? Don't look at social media. Like, look at Luke's stuff and don't use that as how you judge yourself or how you judge other people, because that will never be a good thing. All right, I talked a lot. Guys, what do you guys think of that?
Well, a lot of it makes a great deal of sense. And I think, it's funny from a hatter's point of view. I'll give you this, and that's that we talk about the number of hats that are in your collection, and we talked about maybe 6 to 8 is a great collection and perhaps a practical number. But when you can get up every morning and you've got the choice of maybe 150, 200 felts in different colors and different weights, you've seen influences on the television the night before, you find yourself never really being happy that you've got the best hat. And when I say the best hat, I mean perhaps the one that you really want, because it's the one of the moment, and it's funny, I probably make I don't know, 2 or 3 hats a week, maybe more than that actually, and then restore others. But I then fall in love with a particular hat, and I'll wear it around the house, or I'll wear it on here, or I'll wear it out. And then the next day I'll start something completely different, because some other influence of idea has come through. Now, what that builds up to is contentment. What are you content with? And it's like, I certainly have to probably sit down. I was only thinking this yesterday, as it was, because I put on one of my open road hats yesterday, and I put a post up, do you wear the actual brim down or up? And of course, traditionally it's worn up, but and there was a lot of interaction about that. But I looked at the pictures. I don't photograph myself very often wearing a hat, and I just thought, you know what? People were saying you look all right in that, and what have you. And I thought, yeah, I do. So why don't I keep that hat as part of my collection? And so I'm on this journey now to go through all my hats and look to see what are the sort of 8 to 10 hats that I'll take off sale, I'll keep for myself, and then use this discipline of one in, one out, Very difficult when you've got choices, though.
It is very difficult. I just want to make sure before I chime in, Morgan, did you have anything to say about any of that? You don't have to. Remember, I'm just kind of making sure I respect you guys' your voice here, your platform.
It's all right. You can go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Well, Paul brings up such a great, just such a great idea, right? So and I thought about this as well. It's funny that, like I said, sometimes Paul and I just seem to have like share the same brain sometimes. And I said, there's a connection, but it's not actual, like, meaning we're not actually the same person. But I think about that because, again, remember, I'm somebody that fashions themselves a minimalist. And I get a lot of flack for that at home here. I'm like, wow, what a minimalist here with like 60 plus hats, and I think that's the number right now, if you guys are curious. And it just happens, right? Like I do still feel like a minimalist. Like for me, the hats have a purpose, but I find myself like the minimalist in me is having that same process that Paul's feeling right now, which is I feel like some of my hats, like there's that kind of like that desire to kind of want to rehome them now, right? Like I feel like, oh my gosh, this hat would be adored by so and so, right? So like Uncle Dom always makes, when I go see Uncle Dom, and you guys have seen, if you follow me, you guys know Uncle Dom right now. He's 98. Shout out to you, Uncle Dom. Uncle Dom always mentions my hat. Like he told me the last time I was wearing my Knox Tom and Jerry, he's like, I'll give you $10 for that hat, Luke. I was like, Uncle Dom, I'll give you this hat. Like I literally will give it to you. He's like, oh, no. So it got me thinking. I'm like, okay, I want to get a hat for Uncle Dom, right? Like, and one that he can't like deny, meaning that, hey, it doesn't fit me. It's yours. You have to kind of have it. I don't care if he doesn't wear it, right? I just want him to have it because he makes me feel so good. So he validates me every time I show up, right? And it's all about him. I don't go there to show him my hat. I go there because I wear a hat everywhere. But every single time he kind of validates the hat. And I just want to like, okay, I want you to have one, like, even if you don't wear it. Like, he was somebody that when you're 98, he knows when hats were the thing you wore, right? You didn't like question it. You wore a hat. And then he was there during that transition, right? I think Uncle Don was probably born, I think, if my math is mapping, 1927. I'm like, you're born 1927. You were there for the apex, right? And right there as in the U.S., right, as hats started declining, well into the Kennedy administration. And he said, and he has a little bit of dementia. And sometimes he will, kind of get off topic, but he always mentions that, like, yeah, I used to wear a hat every day. And then at some point, it just like, I felt like it went out of style. And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? And I know those words kind of like, maybe they don't mean, but the idea is that they were pressure. They were the environmental pressure not to wear a hat, because you show up at in the 60s and 70s, you show up to work with a hat on, they'll be like, what are you doing? And if you get into the 80s, oh my gosh, right? Unless, what do you think? You Run DMC? What are you, Indiana Jones, right? People do that because people, they see that and they're like, well, what do you think? You're a celebrity? You know that if you're from New York, if you're from an urban environment, right? The idea of like, in workplace culture, right? If you study the history of work, there's a concept called binging, right? Is this, right? Like, you guys know what I'm talking about. When you used to work for piecemeal at a piecemeal rate in a factory, where your salary was tied into how many widgets you produced, what would people do? If you're a fast worker, right? Like the movie Elf, right? And when all the other elves are making all the toys, they do this. Hey, John, what are you doing? Are you making us look bad? Are you trying to make us look? So they call it binging. It's a phenomenon. It's a social phenomenon. So you can imagine if you're somebody that's trying to navigate the world of work and be a good team player, and somebody and your coworker saying, hey, what are you doing? Slow down. What are you doing? Can you imagine the type of person that you have to be in that environment where you're like, right? And I always talk about this, getting ahead versus getting along. They're the two fundamental pressures in any workplace and in any place, period. How do I get ahead, right, and achieve while also getting along with those folks that, right, I may be their manager at some point, I may be running the corporation at some point. If I maximize my potential, we call that, I think it's called social interaction theory. But that's not what this is about. But everybody knows getting ahead versus getting along. You can get ahead sometimes by getting along. And sometimes you get along by getting ahead, right? It's like Bob at accounting is that guy sucks. Is that well, he's running the company now. Oh, he's not that bad. Right? You guys know, everybody knows that. Like, Paul laughs because that's universal. Right? It's like all of a sudden that jerk is like, and it's a little fake, right? You're respecting the position, but you're like, whoa boy, I better like you don't tell Bob I said that. He's like, right? You're doing that because you know if you don't play ball, right, so to speak, play ball, well, there could be consequences, right? So getting ahead versus getting along, the fundamental concepts. And the universal part is we as human beings seek predictability. So we do that because it gives us predictable outcomes. A raise, it allows us to feed our families, yada, yada, yada. But back to this movie, right, which is the real crux, an hour and 20 minutes into this. The real reason, and again, I won't show photos because, again, you guys seen this movie, right? But if you watch this movie again, and maybe that's what we'll do. Maybe we'll do part 2 of this next week where I'll show you the photos. But watch this movie and look at all the scenarios that you find the Blues Brothers encountered in themselves, right? They are pretty much the Blues Brothers in every scenario. They have little adaptations, right? Sometimes they have, case in point, I'd say adaptation number 1 that I noticed for the Blues Brothers, even though they were still the Blues Brothers regardless, adaptation number 1 that I can think of was when they showed up to the church, right? You guys know that scene where James Brown is the minister. Watch that scene and then watch right before they go there. First of all, Jake does not want to go. Elwood is the one that's kind of dragging them there because, well, their father figure, which is played by Cab Calloway, right? Shout out to Cab Calloway. What Heidi Go Ho guy, right? That's how people know him. But he plays their father figure, the guy that taught them about the blues. He tells them, go to church. And Jake's like, I'm not going to freaking church. And Elwood's like, we're doing it because he said so. That guy's, he's basically our dad, our adoptive dad. So they do it. And Jake is still like mumbling. He's like, I don't want to go to the stupid church. It's dumb. And Elwood's like, do it, right? Remember Elwood's like that kind of that feminine energy, right? Essentially, like you could tell Elwood is something that's really, really reverent. Jake is the troublemaker. He's the guy that says, I don't give a crap about church, and I don't want to do it because I'm in the streets, right? Anybody can respect that dynamic, right? It happens among siblings. It happens amongst parents and their kids. Elwood is kind of like the mom of the 2 brothers. He's like, we're gonna do it, and not just that, we're not gonna look the way we're gonna look. So what they do before they enter the church, they make one adaptation. Do you guys know what it is? Well, the adaptation is you see my collar? They button the collar.
Yeah.
and then they bring up the tie. That's it. And they're good. We fixed ourselves up to go to church. Do you see, right? It's kind of like it seems very benign, but it tells you about both of the brothers, right? Regardless of whether Jake is a rebel, he is very much a rebel. And you already know about Elwood. They're not going to show up in that church without at least saying, hey, we're going to acknowledge that we're going to step into someplace else, right? It's a religious area. We respect our dad, right? Cab Calloway represented the dad figure. And we're going to show in there, and we're still going to be wearing shades, right? We're still going to do this. We're going to wear our hats, right? We're not taking off our hats. We're just going to button our collar because in their minds, that's them showing respect. And it tells you so much about those characters, right? Regardless, these guys, they're going to be themselves, right? But they're going to show up someplace else. They're going to make their best effort to be reverential, but they're still going to be themselves. And you got to respect that. You got to respect that. You know, I mean, what do you think? I mean, Paul, I know it's like, because Paul lives in the UK and Paul knows about social pressures.
Well, you know, When I was just thinking back there to when I was younger, and my stepfather was in the Salvation Army, my mother was in the Elim Church, and I went to a Baptist church, but went to a Catholic school. So I had a very wide appreciation of religion and life from that perspective. But there was this thing called Sunday Best, and Sunday Best was where you when you're looking at buying clothes, there was a sort of hierarchy in your wardrobe that. You bought something first of all that might have been purchased to go out to church on a Sunday, and then as that wore through, you would then progress it to being something that you might wear on a Saturday or in the week. And you'd have this revolving wardrobe, if you like, that showed the respect that you had for the Sabbath, for going to church, for the family, for having Sunday lunch. All of those things were part of the cultural time back in the 60s and I guess going into the 70s. Sadly, I certainly don't see that, and probably because my life's changed, and my parents have passed and so on, but we don't really refer to that so much. I'm sure that some families do, but it's not as wide as it was. But you're quite right, the respect thing was very important. And how many times at school we used to wear a uniform, and the uniform was such that when we went to school in the morning, we wanted to look cool. So we'd have our collar open. We would wear our jackets in a certain way. We'd have a certain kit bag. But then when we had to go into assembly, the collar was done up, the shoes were shined. All of the sort of things that you've just expressed took me back to that time where respect was generated in me. And it's it's something that, whilst it might wane, and yes, you have some crazy days where you don't remember how to respect yourself and how to respect people, but on the whole, it probably sets you up for your life. And that's probably what happened with the Blues Brothers, is that from looking at the Jamaican jazz and the music, and looking at the family set, and looking at how they could combine the two, it was reflected in the way that they lived and they conducted themselves.
I completely agree. And again, I made mention of Cab Calloway, right, as their adoptive dad, but their adoptive mom was who they refer to as the Penguin, the nun from the church, right? They're both parental figures for these two boys, and obviously very different, right? So Cab Calloway is kind of the badass looking guy, right? He dressed right. You see, they got their style from Cab Calloway, from their dad. But obviously they didn't dress like nuns. But what's the similarity? Black and white. The nun is dressed in black and white. The dad is dressed in black and white. One's a bluesman. The other is a nun, a religious nun. Same uniform, like same colors. There's, again, you can't, it's hard to ignore that. And again, I could be reading way into the movie, but that's what art does. To me, that's what art does. It has an impact, and it tells you probably more about yourself than it does about the art.
I think so. I think, Luke, I'm ever so sorry, but I'm going to have to leave the meeting right now. But as always, great session, and lovely to talk. I mean, the Blues Brothers, lovely. I shall go and watch that film again now. Maybe
we'll talk about it again next week. I have a couple ideas about next week, so I won't firm it up. But if need be, at the end of the show, I would make a decision, and obviously I'll confer with you guys, my board. But Paul, thank you so much. I appreciate you having you on, and you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, and Morgan, so nice to see you. Please come on and join us.
Good to see you, Paul.
I feel as though you too. I feel as though it's great to have somebody else that can answer one or two of the questions, and also, share with the hats. It's difficult to see your hat that you've got on today, Morgan. But
I know the lighting.
Yeah,
this is a 50 Beaver 50 hood in black.
Yeah.
I see the black was the theme, so I said, okay, I'll get out my black hat. Excuse my hair, but I asked Michael when I had it made. I think this was my second custom hat that I had made by him.
Yeah.
Put a little silver accent in it. So
Fantastic.
That's all right. We're gonna get, so Morgan, we'll compare notes in terms of the lighting, because I'm hoping that this is not the only time. Paul, have a great day, sir.
Thanks very much.
Later, Paul.
Paul John Murphy, ladies and gentlemen. Man, wow, what a what an asset, right? What Paul it just adds. I think he classes up the joint, you know, with respect to myself, right? Again, that's why I love. He is kind of like my. If I had to pick an Elwood, you know, to my Jake, you know, and obviously, when it comes down to here, when Robert's on there, then I'm Elwood and he's Jake because Robert's a lot more badass than I am. But you know, this is how it goes, right? Like we can be. Sometimes you're a brother and a sister. Sometimes you're a mom and your dad. Sometimes you're a son and a daughter, right? It's like we have that all in us. You know what I mean? Like we know that's the truth, right? But yeah, so basically, when it comes down to this movie, you already get such like a feel for the fact that like the history of these two guys. They go to church, right? And they make that adjustment, but the whole movie is like that, and that's the thing. Let's just let's go actually look at the photos, right? So now that we kind of I guess set the base here, I'll show you some photos. You guys, obviously, I'll tell you what I feel. Morgan, you can always react to anything you see, you know, and you guys that are watching us can kind of react as well. I'm gonna add the slideshow to the stage, and then we'll talk. But like a lot of this is kind of like showing you the profiles of all the hats, right? These two hats are very similar, but they're also different. You know, the hat that John is wearing, so Joliet Jake, is kind of a really stingy brim. It's a trilby, right? They're both technically trilbies, right? Yes. In the sense, but John's, right? So Jake's trilby is even a stingier brim. At least it seems like that, right? Remember, obviously, there's a height difference here. There's a couple differences. Besides the height, there's also the facial structure of these two gentlemen, right? Remember, I talked about the other day about a lot of folks thought I was Elwood, not Jake, which was, you know, in many ways understandable after I thought about it. I'm like, well, yeah, I lost a little bit of weight, right? I still think of myself as Jake, right, for a lot of reasons. But my face is longer. So not carrying as much weight. I'm not short, but I'm also not tall. I'm about 5'10". So I'm average height. A lot of people are like, and you know what's funny is that most folks, they didn't call me Elwood. They called me Elroy. And I don't know why, but it made sense in my head. Like, yeah, Elroy, you know, they don't know. Everybody knew Jake. They say Jake. They didn't know Elwood. They were referred to me as Elroy. And I think I made that mistake in my mind sometimes. You know, it's kind of like El something, you know? As long as they don't call me El DeBarge, you know, nothing wrong with El DeBarge, but that'd be a little off. But Elwood and Elroy sounds like, all right, I get it. I know what you meant. So then, yeah, you look more like Elwood. And I'm like, all right, I get it. But yeah, these two fedoras are still, right? They're different. Like if you really are hat nerd, you could tell the difference between two fedoras. But they look, right? The two brothers are dressed so similar that you can't even notice, you know? At least I think, you know, like my hat that I have here, this is my Knox Custom, right? I mentioned this before, my Knox Custom with custom edge. It is made for a hat shop that I'm 100% positive doesn't exist because it's in DC. I wouldn't know it. And it was Raleigh Haberdasher in Washington, DC. So, right, that's my major city next to, right near me is Washington, DC. So when I got this hat, besides the fact that I was like, wow, it seems like a Blues Brother hat. It came from Washington, DC. And I felt like, wow, everything's right. Remember I talked about all those levers? Like when you see a hat, it could be the color, it could be the shape, it could be the city of the hat shop, right? Maybe you know the hat shop, maybe you kind of just know the city. Those are all levers. That's the reason why I always talk about it when I post, is that, well, you may not like this hat, but maybe you like the city that it came from, right? Right. It's something that hat nerds, you'll know it when you see it. So yeah, there's so many photos here. I won't go through all of them. You know, I'll just make mention of what makes sense. We talked about this, right? Like Jake is getting picked up, right? Again, this is like Elwood being the mom of the two brothers. And if you guys have brothers or siblings, you guys know there's always like one or two, right? If you have a lot of siblings myself, there might be several of them that are more like mom than they are like that than they are like dad. Again, even though they're brothers, right? You have that masculine and feminine energy. I won't talk too much about this, right? So you could just see a lot of angles here about these hats, right? This one is like a light shining down. One thing I want to mention here as well about the Blues Brothers is, you know, if you're gonna like, I don't really like, I'm not as big of a fanatic about like being realistic, right? So I didn't tattoo my hand like Jake, right? Right. If you guys watch the movie, you know that they both have tattoos of their names on their hands. I didn't do that. I didn't feel like I needed to. Right. We know that I already mentioned that my hat is not like that. But some people are, right? Meaning that some people, when they do cosplay, right? My brother, one of my older brothers does cosplay. So he goes and he dresses up like his favorite, comic book character. And he does a lot of the costuming himself. And he prides himself on accuracy, right? His latest one at the New York Comic Con, he went as Vega from Street Fighter. I liked Street Fighter growing up. So I was like, all right, that's kind of a cool. And he did a great job. Right? He pulled it off. But regardless, right? Meaning somebody might say, oh, I'm an expert on Vega. And you're like, you did this wrong. You did that wrong. I mean, I hope that nobody would do that. But I always go out expecting somebody to say, well, where's the Jake on your hand? And, why is your trilby not exactly like Jake's? You know, I'm like, well, you're going to do that then, right? But one thing I mentioned for those folks is that, you know, a lot of folks will assume that, right? Because what do they wear, right? You guys know my glasses, right? This is like a classic. These are Wayfarers, right? And some people know that. Some people don't care. They might recognize it, but they don't know that they're Ray-Ban Wayfarers. But that's what the Blues Brothers wear. They wear Wayfarer Ray-Bans, and they're really sharp, right? So like I have heavy prescription on my glasses. The nice thing is if you wear Wayfarers, the thickness of your glasses, they don't feel as thick anymore because it's a thick frame. So for those folks that like need a thicker prescription, right? Wayfarers, take a look at Wayfarers, right? They're not that expensive. I mean, they can be, but if you have like vision insurance, that might offset a lot of the cost, or you could buy them used. Like Wayfarers have been around for so long, right? And they are a classic frame. So I just for those folks that are like, what kind of glasses is Luke wearing? You know, these are Wayfarers. These are the exact same Wayfarers, right? This one that you see me in all the time, and these are both the same model of Wayfarers. They're just different colors, and I know they don't seem like it, but they are. I think one of these, I think this might be tortoiseshell, and these are Havana. They're very similar colors. One's lighter than the other, but it doesn't matter. The three popular colors are black, tortoiseshell, and Havana. At least in my mind. So if you guys are interested in like what kind of glasses I wear, well, that's what they are. And I basically, the difference is I have what's called the new Wayfarer, right? These guys are wearing the classic Wayfarers, and there is a difference, right? If you guys are interested, I'll tell you. The difference is the classic Wayfarer. You see, if you see the side profile, you see that there's kind of like a little slope here. Well, it's a more pronounced slope on the classic Wayfarer. So the ones that the Blues Brothers are wearing are, the model number I think is 2140. And these are 4340. And the difference is because a lot of folks complained about it to Ray-Ban. They said, we like the Wayfarer, but why is that slope? It digs into my eye socket. And some people, they love it because of that slope, right? So the Ray-Ban sells both of them. So they have the Wayfarer and the new Wayfarer. Just want to make sure that that's actually, there's actually another version of the Wayfarer that I actually also own, and it's actually in black, and it's the model 2132, and it's the same as this new Wayfarer, except that it's a smaller profile. I only mentioned this for my man Tim. I have a gentleman Tim who lives in the Netherlands. That's my Facebook friend. He's a smaller guy from what he tells me. And he was like, I like those because they're not as big on my face. And I'm like, I have a smaller face. He has a smaller head size. So I told him, well, this is the model number. It's 2132. If you want something like a Wayfarer that's just smaller in profile, right? And you see, I have Blues Brothers pics of myself in those Wayfarers as well as these. And you could tell one's bigger than the other, and those happen to be black. So I kind of have like the full spectrum for myself, except for the original Wayfarer. In my mind, I never tried them. I didn't like the idea of the slope digging into my face. I was like, I'm okay with not being authentic to the original Wayfarer. It doesn't mean I won't get them one day. Maybe one day I will. But right now, if you are interested in Ray-Bans and Ray-Ban glasses, those are like probably the quintessential Ray-Bans are the Wayfarers. Another one, which is a little bit newer, called the Clubmaster. Those are also sharp. If you had a big prescription like myself, I tend to shy away from those because the rim is a lot smaller, but it's still a great look. I love the Clubmaster look. And we'll talk about the Clubmaster in movies when they show up, because they do show up. At least the inspiration for the Clubmaster shows up, like Malcolm X. Malcolm X wore a pair of glasses that is probably the predecessor for the Clubmaster. I doubt it was Clubmasters. I believe Malcolm X came, his time was before Ray-Ban released the Clubmaster. But you guys know, when you see the glasses, you're like, oh, I know those glasses. And Ray-Ban put them out as the Clubmaster. Very, very sharp. So just give you a little point. This is technically, I think YouTube classifies my channel as a style channel, and I don't classify myself as a style guy. But some people go and they say, hey, Luke, I like your style. I like your guayaberas. I like your bowling shirts. I like your glasses. I like your look. So I want to all right, if you like that and you want to know what it is, well, I'll show you. There's no secret to it. It's very easy stuff. So that's the idea. And then I believe Elwood's Ray-Bans are black, and Elwood's, I believe, are either Havana, tortoise, or some kind of red. I know it doesn't look it on a lot of photos, but if you look in the first scenes, like when Jake is he's checking out with the person that was doing the inventory, classic scene. That was Frank Oz, the guy that was essentially giving Jake his stuff back. You can see one pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, and then he shows you the color of the sunglasses. It's very reddish brown. And you see it in various parts in the movie if you really look and paying attention. So just FYI. So anyway, they're not black. Jake's glasses are not black. They're OTB, other than black, or off-track betting if you grew up like I grew up when your dad played the horses. Let's see. Again, right? We talked about situations in this movie, right? The Blues Brothers are going to be the Blues Brothers no matter what. What is the adaptation that they made here? They're like, we're in a fancy restaurant. You can see high society people around here. What did they do? Remember we talked about the collar? All they did to make the adaptation, to show the respect to Chez Paul's, the fancy restaurant, they put on blankets inside their shirts. They said, this is us being respectful. But at the same time, we're going to do this. You see that? Like, they do both, because all they're doing is trying to be comfortable in their own minds. We're respectful. We want to appear respectful. So we're going to show up here to collect our band, one of the members of our band. But we're going to do this, but we're going to show our respect by putting in a blanket, like a napkin over our shirts, right? I just think it's hilarious. It is very genius of the filmmakers to do these kind of things. But the idea is that the Blues Brothers, no matter what, are going to be the Blues Brothers, regardless of where they go.
Yeah.
We'll keep going here because it's again, just a lot of iconic shots. I love the black and white shots, to be honest.
That is a nice shot.
Yeah, it's something about black and white, like the black and white photos. It's kind of like a noir style.
Yeah.
Even if it's a color movie, when they show you black and white photos, it's like something you want to put up on your wall. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Boop, boop. Again, they're going to be the Blues Brothers, right? What do you see here? They're in a sauna. What is Elwood here wearing? He's wearing his hat and his sunglasses.
He's wearing his hats. Yeah.
And then everybody else, right? They don't have hats. The rest of the band is still wearing their sunglasses. You see that? Like, we're going to show up anywhere we go, and we're still going to be ourselves. we'll make little adaptations, right? So their adaptation is that we're going to be pretty much naked with a towel, but we're still going to wear our shades. And then Elwood's like, I'm still wearing my hat. I don't care. I'm not taking off the hat. As a hat nerd, you got to respect that. You know what I mean? I'm like, man, look at Elwood doing it. And again, Elwood's the respectful one. You know what I mean? Like, who knows what Jake would have done that scene? You know, I don't even know if Jake is in the scene, but this shot is just Elwood. I'll keep going. Again, these guys are basically superheroes, right? Like, this could have been, and actually it is a comic book now. That's one thing I'll get to, that there's a graphic novel about the Blues Brothers, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I just gonna keep going through some of these photos. Again, you can see product placement here, right? I think that's this very same scene that we showed the black and white photo of. They're at the Howard Johnson's, and then you can see here, positively no smoking. Like, they don't care. Like, they don't care. They're gonna do their own. I don't think they're smoking in this scene, but you know that something bad's gonna happen because you can read the writing on the wall, or this case, the propane tank. Something bad's gonna happen. That's why I love this movie. It's kind of cheap in many ways. Like, it's kind of like cheap glass, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Again, song, you know, we kind of beat that one up. There's lots of song in this. You got the band, right? They don't wear hats, but they got the shades, right? This is actually a real band. You know, this is like the same band, right? The Blues Brothers were born on Saturday Night Live. It was a skit, and then everybody loved it. So they ran with it and made it into a movie. That's the brilliant part about all of this, is that it was like the original SNL skit turned movie. Obviously, kind of like the car. That's the other part of this. Their car also black and white. It's a cop car. It's a former cop car. They talk about it extensively. Elwood picked up Jake in this car. The first thing Jake said is, "What do you do with our old car? This thing's a piece of junk." And Elwood's like, "No, it's not. It's got a cop motor. It's got a cop tires. It's got a cop everything, cop suspension, right?" So he's telling Jake, "Hey, you want to dig this car because first of all, I picked it up for a song, right? And it's gonna help us out in doing what we got to do because you know your scandalous butt is gonna get us in trouble and it's gonna come in handy." So then Jake's like, "All right, well, just fix the cigarette lighter because I'm still gonna smoke." Again, you got to think about, like, none of this stuff is an accident. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's kind of like, I like that exchange because it just reminded me of like brothers bickering. You know, somebody like, "What are you doing?" You know, you kind of know, like, you guys grew up with siblings. Sometimes you grow up with close friends that they may not be related to you, but they're like, they might as well be, right? They're like, this is like my brother from another mother, right? That's the term that we tend to give that. You have a kinship to people. And when you do that, when you feel that, they might as well be your brother, even if they're not related to you. So yeah, so with Jake and Elwood, they definitely have it. They rib each other, right? They're like, "What are you doing?" Anyway, I just thought I was really warmed in the heart when I saw that. Right. Again, they go through a bunch of stuff together. They're like indestructible. Like they get blown up and they still survive. They're kind of written almost like
right back.
Morgan, you were saying something?
I will be right back.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, again, music. Here's a shot where you can kind of see the differences in the crown, right? So like Elwood has kind of a taller crown. It's Elwood's style, like the crown shape is a little bit more like like if Indiana Jones wore a black hat, but also a stingy brim, right? Like take Indiana Jones's hat, make it black, make it a stingy brim, and then you kind of got Elwood's hat. Whereas Jake's hat's kind of like a classic trilby, right? Almost like a Frank Sinatra trilby, but again, all black. So again, I think two classic styles that, wow, I think the Blues Brothers came before, right? The Blues Brothers came before Indiana Jones, at least as far as I know. This is 1980. I think Indiana Jones was like 81 or 83. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But you can see here that there might have been some influence there. or maybe there was just some common influence. I don't know the answer to that. You guys could tell me. But right, the Frank Sinatra style, we talked about that. My knockaround hat's like a Frank Sinatra style trilby hat. My Knott's Tom and Jerry. Hey, Ian, how's it going, my friend? Ian Reed, our other moderators here. Hello all. Ian, good to see you. You know, we got Morgan Hunt here as well. I was just commenting. I just saw Morgan's icon, the American flag. Shout out to that. You know, Morgan's gonna be back here very shortly. I was just talking about, well, obviously it took me a while to get to the actual crux of the movie and to show some photos, but you know, this is just a shot here that kind of really indicates a couple things. One, it gives you that nice silhouette. It shows you a little bit of the difference, right, between the hats worn by both Elwood and by Jake. Because some people, I think they watch the movie, maybe they don't watch it very closely, and they're like, well, they wore the same hat. It's like, well, no, they didn't. They really didn't. But you know, they definitely weren't the same shape. If they were the same hat, that's one thing, but they're definitely not the same shape. And it's hard to say they're the same hat because you could see that Elwood's hat is a lot taller in the crown, right? And he's got those front pinches, those front dents that are very similar to like the Indiana Jones style, the Indy style front dents. You know, the Jake Trilby fedora has more of like kind of like this, the pronounced side dents. They're not front dents, they're side dents, right? And his crown comes to more of a point, similar to this one. I don't know. Again, seems like this is just stuff that maybe hat nerds and maybe hat nerds with more OCD will come up. But Ian, welcome back. Good to see you on here, my friend. We were just talking about you, all good, but you knew that hopefully. Yeah, this is again another scenario. This is a very well-known scene, right? Remember we talked about how the Blues Brothers are going to be the Blues Brothers, no matter where they go, right? They're going to be the Blues Brothers. Well, they showed up at they did show up at a country bar, Bob's Country something. I think Bob's Country Bunker is the name of the bar. They show up at Bob's Country Bunker, right? And Jake lies to the band. He lies to his brother and he lies to the band, telling them that they have a gig there, right? So, right, Jake's not opposed to lying. And they show up and they convince the staff at Bob's Country Bunker that they are the band, right? And Elwood kind of suspects that something's up because he's reading the marquee and it says the good old boys, right? And Jake's like, whoa, that's all wrong. I'll have to kind of fix this with the staff, but you know, let's just go in there and get ready. So sure enough, Jake is like hustling, you know, and telling the staff there that they're the band, right? He doesn't mention anything, right? He doesn't tell them the name. He just says, we're the band. So they assume that they're the good old boys, right? Even though they look a little off, they just assume, okay, these guys wear hats. Now it's a very interesting scene, right? Because on a very different scene than we're seeing the Blues Brothers in. But guess what? They're still the Blues Brothers, right? They don't look out of place. They don't feel out of place. They're just like, yeah, we're here. And they go and their adaptation. What's their adaptation here? They play Rawhide. The song is the adaptation. Hey, happy Halloween, Dark Soul Night. Greetings from Wales, Dark Soul Night from Wales. See that? I got it now. I remember. Thanks for mentioning that twice for me, Dark Soul Night. It takes me a while sometimes, but I like to know where folks are coming from sometimes. Just because again, they're part of my data bank for where people are situated, right? Where my audience is coming from. But yeah, happy Halloween, Dark Soul Night from Wales. So Morgan, I don't know if you caught any of that, but this scene right here, I mentioned because remember we talked about how the Blues Brothers are still the Blues Brothers no matter where they are?
Yes.
This is another situation. So this time they're at a country western bar, right? So you can imagine, okay, what's going to happen now? The Blues Brothers at a country western bar, they're like anti-country, right? Like they're not a group that is, right? They're blues people. They're not country people. Dark Soul Knight says, yes, you got it. Haha. Hope you're doing good, Luke. I am doing even better now that you joined us, my friend. I appreciate it. Shout out to Wales. Shout out to Dark Soul Knight. I appreciate you joining us. But yeah, so they show up, right? Jake lies to his band. He lies to his brother. He lies to the band saying they have a gig here, even though Elwood notices the marquee saying the good old boys. Like, who's this? That's not us. He's like, oh, they must have screwed that up. So Jake goes in and sweet talks his way, right? And lies his way into getting a gig, right? He says, we're the band. And they're like, oh, okay, good. One of the funny parts here is they asked the lady, right? Because they're trying to be respectful. What do you guys play here? What kind of music do you play here? He goes, oh, we got both kinds. We got bluegrass and country western. Something like that. Essentially, basically telling them, like, you got to play our music. That's what she communicated to them. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The Blues Brothers, being the Blues Brothers, they adapted. What happened was they played a song that got the band, like, right? Everybody knows about, even if you've never been to a country western bar, you guys know that when you go to a country western bar, you fall in line, right? You gotta, even if you don't like country music, you better learn to like it. They're not gonna play anything else, right? The Blues Brothers are very aware of that. They try, right? They try to play their music, and they're not buying it. The band, like the crowd, are throwing drinks, right? They're like, oh my gosh. Guess what they do? They adapt. They start on into the theme of Rawhide, and the crowd loves it. The crowd loves it, you know. And it's Jake and Elwood being themselves, like, right? They dig that song because they dug the show, right? They probably watched it on TV, but they're like, okay, this is the only country we know. Hopefully you guys like it. And they loved it. The crowd ate it up. Again, Jake and Elwood being respectful, or trying their best to be respectful, but still being Jake and Elwood, and you gotta love it. They're still the Blues Brothers. You're gonna keep seeing this theme, so I'll keep running through the photos. But it goes to show you, right? This is the same scene. Again, they're doing their best to try to appease the crowd. This is right when they get in and they start lying, right? Well, Jake does, right? Elwood doesn't even know what, you know. Elwood thinks that they are here for a gig. Only Jake knows that they're not really the band that's supposed to show up. Okay, this is that same scene that we talked about earlier when they're in the fancy restaurant. The main thing here that I wanted to point out is, right, we talked about the adaptation. They put the fancy napkins on there. But look who their waiter is. This movie is so full of cameos, it's not even funny. The waiter is Paul Reubens. Do you guys know who Paul Reubens is? He played Pee Wee Herman. Like, maybe a lot of people knew that already, but I'm going to point it out. Their waiter at Chez Paul's is Pee Wee Herman, right? He even has the Pee Wee Herman hairdo. And maybe Pee Wee Herman doesn't mean anything to you guys. That's fine. But if you were a kid and grew up in the 80s like me, you guys all know who Pee Wee Herman is, you know. But he's in this movie, and he was their waiter. So interesting. And Pee Wee Herman is one of those gentlemen that's no longer with us. He passed away a few years back. But yeah, iconic character, Pee Wee Herman from the 80s. Paul Reubens became famous for something else, and I won't go into that because, you know, it's a fairly friendly, family-friendly show I like to have here. But yeah, again, you see the thing about Jake and Elwood that you're seeing in all these photos? Do they look nervous in any photo? They don't. They don't, because that's the power of the glasses. Right, the costume, right? Like I call it a costume, but it's just the way they dress. When you're dressed like this, right? When I showed up to the Halloween party, some people thought I was one of the men in black. Right? This uniform, black and white. Yeah. If I want to, right? If I really wanted to, right? Another fearless character, John Wick, right? Mm-hmm. John Wick has a black shirt, right? If I wanted to wear the same uniform and I wanted to be John Wick, what I would do is I would lose the hat. I would take my hair, I would slick it back, and obviously let it grow longer. And then the shirt, instead of white, I would wear a black shirt. Guess what? I'm now John Wick. You see, the idea here is behind, like, right, badassery. There's a badassness to this uniform, right? And that's the reason why they wear it, because they're comfortable, meaning that it's like their support blanket. They can go anywhere, any neighborhood, encounter any foe, and they're going to be emboldened, and they're going to be themselves, right? They'll still be respectful, but they'll be themselves because they have this uniform. It's kind of like, I'm a badass. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, you put me anywhere, I'm going to be fine. Again, that's what I read from this movie. It could be different for you guys, but that's what I get. And I'll continue. This is just a shot of the prison, right? So Joliet Jake is not an accident. Joliet was a real prison in Illinois. It's I think it's no longer it's either no longer around or it's no longer called Joliet Correctional Center. But it is right. It says here Illinois Department of Corrections. So that's where Joliet Jake comes from. So I just wanted you guys to know that. We talked about the hand tattoos, right? Jake has a tattoo Jake on his left hand, right? And it looks like a little pitchfork, right? I don't know if you guys have ever been to jail. I've never been to jail. But if you guys know about jailhouse tattoos, right, and gang tattoos, pitchfork means something. And I won't go anywhere else with that. You guys can look it up, what a pitchfork means when you're, especially if you're somebody that's in a gang or in jail, right? It means something. It's not an accident. Like, I think Scarface had a pitchfork tattoo on him, right? Al Pacino and Scarface. But I'll leave it there because, again, I don't want to get too much into that. Again, John Belushi, right? This is right up front. This is the actor, right? The reason I mentioned this is because, well, John Belushi was like, he's the star of the show, right? I picked Jake because John Belushi, even though I love Elwood too, John Belushi, the actor, was like, this was his heyday, right? He did Animal Farm. Sorry, not Animal Farm. Animal House. Animal Farm's a book, a good book, by the way. But Animal House was, I think, his introduction to a lot of folks, right? And then obviously Saturday Night Live. But John Belushi, you got to understand, he died at 33, right? He died of drugs, right? Everybody knows about Chris Farley in more recent times. Chris Farley was always compared to John Belushi because they were physical comedians, they were bigger guys, and they lived very fast lifestyles, right? So like Jake coming, like John Belushi playing a badass is not a stretch. Like, he was a guy that just did weird stuff. Like, he did it usually to make you laugh. But, in many ways, again, I don't know how John Belushi grew up. I do know a little bit about how Chris Farley grew up. When you're a bigger guy, right? And I'll mention this because I grew up, right, in high school and grade school. I was a bigger guy, right? There's the idea of the fat funny guy. Everybody knows about the fat funny guy because, well, that's how you win friends when you're a bigger person, right? It's so you don't get teased. You go and you make the class laugh. And I did that too. I was the fat. So sometimes my humor comes from the fact that I was a fat funny kid growing up, right? These are ways that you go and you preemptively attack, right? You go like, there's no way you can make fun of me because I can make fun of myself. And that's the reason why people gravitate to people like John Belushi and to Chris Farley and to other folks, right? Like John Candy, who's in this movie as well, right? You kind of know the fat funny guy. You watch comedians that are really big. They're funny because they probably grew up big, and they had to be funny to survive, right? It's like you see that it's a story as old as time of the fat funny comedian, and females do it as well. But you see that the fat guy who is the class clown. That's it's a trope at this point.
Well, pardon me, Luke. Before you continue, I do have to leave. I'm so sorry. I have to take in a delivery soon.
No worries, Morgan.
I'm still moving in.
Hey, we'll get together next week.
Yes, sounds good.
Awesome. Hey, Morgan.
All righty.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye, Luke.
All right, ciao, Morgan. Morgan Brown, one of my two faithful moderators here. And speaking of which, let's see here. this is like a long time coming, but let's see here. All right. Well, I don't know. We'll have to kind of see. Okay. All right. I guess StreamYard is a little different. All right. That's okay. I had an idea, but it's all good. 1 second. Just reply. Just got to reply some comments here. Yeah. So here's another shot. Remember, again, this whole movie is how do we place Jake and Elwood into various situations and see them kind of be themselves and also adapt. Here they go to jail, right? Not a big adaptation, right? Maybe for Elwood, but for Jake, this is home, right? And you can see he adapts the uniform. He still has the glasses, right? The Ray-Bans and the trilby, but they're doing a concert in jail. This is like very much like, you guys, anybody knows Johnny Cash? Johnny Cash made he had a famous concert, I believe, in Folsom Prison, right? I think that's how the Folsom Blues song came about. But it doesn't matter. Johnny Cash, right? If you talk to maybe if you did an interview with Dan Aykroyd and maybe John Belushi before John Belushi passed, you got to imagine that Johnny Cash somewhere in here is part of like the inspiration for them. You know what I mean? Shout out to Johnny Cash, especially the movie. Man, if you watch the movie Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix, wow, what a great movie. And Joaquin did all the singing. So did Reese Witherspoon. So shout out to that. Shout out to Johnny Cash. Shout out to Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon for that movie. Wow, what a great movie. If you're a fan of biopics like I am, Walk the Line and Walk the Line, Beyond the Sea, which is the Bobby Darin story, as well as the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx on the life and times of Ray Charles, who's in this movie, right? No, of course he is, because Ray Charles is awesome. So yeah, we'll just keep going. Again, adaptations, right? Like this is him in the fancy restaurant. This is him over at, I guess they're at the hotel, and he's like he's chilling in his bed, and he's still fully dressed, in his outfit, right? Because it's comforting. This is how Jake Jake and Elwood feel comfortable, but more so Jake. He has to be in uniform. Now here is going to be an interesting thing, right? What happens when Jake takes off his uniform, right? When you don't see Jake in uniform, you see him early on. When he's coming out of jail, he's not in uniform, right? He's a prisoner. But later on in the movie, you see him without his a big part of his uniform, which are his shades and his hat. Well, no, I think he has just his shades off, right? So I think he has his hat on. But let me show you this photo here. Look at this, right? And then look at this. Different person, right? I mean, obviously not a different person, the same person, but this guy, right? Let's say you meet this guy on the street, and then you meet this guy. You probably treat him a little different, right? Basically nothing's changed except he's got dirt on his face or mud, and he's got his glasses off so you can see his eyes, right? Remember the movie Scarface? The eyes, Chico, they never lie, right? And then the eyebrows all of a sudden come up. He becomes like a puppy dog, right? And then I'll show you some more here, right? Look at this. He becomes a lot more of that, less of a badass without his shades, right? He becomes more vulnerable. Again, this is the power of costuming and creating the character, right? And again, I gotta imagine that there's no accident that we see that Jake in this scene here without his glasses, because he's meant to show vulnerability. This is a guy that, like I said, he's a jail guy. He's a street guy. He's not like showing weakness is not his thing. But you see here, all of a sudden, you got essentially a kind of like a little bit of a puppy dog. That's that's beautiful, Anyway, we'll go on to Elwood. Again, we showed Jake's hands. Now we'll show you Elwood's hands, right? So obviously more letters, right? But Elwood, he's got it in the two hands. He's got to go for the OD. I thought it was pretty interesting. But yeah, again, very crude tattooing here. But hey, these aren't guys that are like highfalutin guys, right? They're not going to pay a bunch of money for to get their names on their hands. They'll probably just do it themselves, right? If you had to guess, it could have been that Jake got his tattoo in jail, and then he made, and Elwood got his tattoo from Jake. You know what I mean? Like if I had to create the story, it would probably be that. Again, this is another silhouette of Elwood, right? He's a taller guy, right? He's picking up his brother, right? And he's got the badass pose, right? Like if you might as well see Run DMC around Jake right now, right? That's how, right? That pose, right? That pose with the arms together, right? That's badassery, right? Like somebody that does that pose, right? Executives do it all the time. They won't wear shades and a hat, but executives in their pose, you see this pose all the time, right? If you're a fan of urban dancing, right? The b-boys, right? The break dancers. This was called the b-boy stance, right? You would either do it right as you would go like this as you watch somebody else do their dance, right? To kind of say, hey, I got this, right? You will also do it to finish your dance, right? A lot of b-boys, they would finish like this. As in, yeah, you got served, right? That whole idea of the battle. It also serves another function, right? Psychologically, is that it's self-soothing, right? When people hold themselves, it might look badass, but it also serves a function is that it's self-soothing, right? When people fidget with their hands sometimes, right? When we kind of like do this, right? It's a form of self-soothing, right? It has that benefit as well. It looks badass, right? It's intimidating to look at. It's also for somebody that's doing it. They're self-soothing. I think it's really cool, to be honest. And obviously Dan Aykroyd, right? Man, just again, still pretty damn badass, and I gotta appreciate like the hair coming out. That's another thing. I didn't have the sideburns. I don't really grow very like even facial hair. That's why I could never do maybe a John Wick or something like that. But yeah, I think again, besides the sideburns, they're pretty clean shaven otherwise, and they look sharp. They still look badass, right? It's power of the uniform. Just some more shots of Elwood Blues, right? Side profile here. This is at Bob's Country Bunker, right? He's singing Rawhide to win over the crowd. And then let's see what else. Okay, remember we showed Elwood, right? We showed Jake with his with some of his uniform off. We have a scene here, or I can see a couple scenes of Elwood with various parts of his uniform off, right? We showed you that one where he's in the sauna, right? He has the hat and glasses and he's in a towel, otherwise naked in the sauna, but he's got his hat, sunglasses. And we have other shots, right? Elwood's not a tough, like a super tough. He's not tough as Joliet Jake, right, as his brother, but he is still a tough guy. He's kind of like a motherly tough, right? He's like one of those guys, like a protector tough. And you can see him; he's on the job, right? So he's walking into his boss's office, right? And he sits down and look, without the glasses, right? He's got a set of protective eyewear, right? These are kind of like PPE. Right, protective personal protection equipment, right? If you work at a warehouse, you guys know about PPE. He doesn't have a hard hat on. He's got his hat, right? So he still has his tie. He's got his shirt, right? He's got his sunglasses in his pocket, right? Has his shirt unbuttoned, but he doesn't have what? His sunglasses. Now all of a sudden that the badassery goes away, right? He still got the hat, but the badassery kind of goes away to a little degree, right? He still looks all right, but the sunglasses, the Ray-Bans, right? They're like that secret sauce. They kind of go with the hat, and it turns them into like, it makes them fit in, right? This is this is Elwood's adaptation to work, right? Because he's the only one. I think Jake is probably too proud to work. He'd rather just steal from somebody. Elwood, somebody that doesn't mind working, right? Maybe that's what the nuns taught him, to go get a job. So you can see here, his adaptation is to his environment is, I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to put my shades in my pocket, and then obviously I don't have my jacket on. And then all of a sudden he becomes a lot more human. And this is him leaving the office, right? Again, this is professional Elwood. I love it. You know, as somebody that studies work psychology, you got to love it. And again, this is kind of another, like, this is Elwood kind of sneaking around. Like I said, they might as well be spies, right? If you thought of the Blues Brothers as kind of a spy movie, cops and robbers movie, all that kind of movie, right? All kind of action, right? And you'd be right. It probably is like, it checks all those boxes. Okay, this is Dan Aykroyd at a San Diego comic convention. This is kind of talking about kind of the revival of the graphic novel series. Remember I told you that it is a graphic novel that was, I think, released. I want to say it was earlier this year, right? So I think you can find it on Amazon. It's essentially done in a way that it's kind of like, what if the Blues Brothers, right? What if the story continued after the events of this movie? And then obviously you have Dan Aykroyd reprising his role. You know, he's got the shades and the Elwood hat. Obviously, John Belushi has passed at this point, long past. But Dan Aykroyd is still holding it down. It goes to show you how reverential he is about the movie, right? But wait, there's more. At the very same, right? The very same table sits two people here, right next to him, right? This is Luke Paisano, right? I love that, right? This is Luke Paisano. Who is Luke Paisano? Well, Luke Paisano is, I believe, John Belushi's son. Now, again, I don't know that for a fact. I do know that he is the son of, of somebody with the name Belushi. I assume, right? I didn't do the research, but maybe it could be his nephew. Who knows? He has a family relationship to John Belushi, and his name is Luke, which I think, I don't know, I feel a little bit better about that. He is one of the writers that is involved with the graphic novel, right? So this is like one of Luke's passion projects, is to remember his family member. Again, I don't know if John Belushi was his dad or if it was his uncle. There's some sort of family relationship there that I didn't look up because I didn't have enough time, but I thought it was really cool. Who else is next to them? Well, this is the lady there to the very far right, is Stella Aykroyd. Again, I'm assuming that's the daughter of Dan Aykroyd. She is also involved in this graphic novel. So you got the two main characters have a family relationship that the family thought of to continue having, right? They're like, this movie means so much to our older relatives that it means so much to us. And we want to go and we want to contribute our own. Wow, what a beautiful legacy, right? We talk about legacy, you know, and I couldn't think of much more beautiful legacy than that. And this is the more expanded version of that panel. You have Dan Aykroyd, Luke Paisano, Stella Aykroyd, and then you have James Werner, as well as Rance Hoseley. And again, I don't know what roles they play. I think Luke Werner is involved. I don't know if he's part of like the story crafter, like another story, like another writer for the graphic novel. And I don't know who this gentleman is, Rance. I just know his name. There's a Brazilian artist that is in charge of doing the artwork. I don't remember his name. He's not pictured in this panel. He's not showing up here. But yeah, so yeah. Again, that kind of covers a lot of the kind of the core characters here, but then there are the musical characters. And I won't spend a lot of time on this. I'll just run through some of these photos. You got obviously the late, great Aretha Franklin. Wow, classic, right? So this is like you know, like this is for many folks the Queen of Soul, right? I mean, I think that's what her name was, the Queen of Soul. If not, then it should be. Again, just the musical candy in this movie is just, it's like a cross section of all the great artists after, right? Like the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I think are the primary decades that a lot of these artists, that was their heyday. It doesn't mean they weren't doing music well after that, right? But the heyday for a lot of the artists featured here are in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and that's no accident, right? It kind of goes to show you, you know, these are the musicians that somebody that was raised by Cab Calloway's character, right? These are the artists that you would have featured on here. Like I said, it's a who's who. So I'll just keep running through some of these photos so that ways you guys can see. But obviously on your end, if you guys watch this in syndication, you can kind of pause. But you can see, right? They tend to focus not right when the Blues Brothers are here, right? They tend to be reverential towards the musical guest, right? The person doing the cameo. So here you can see a lot of this behind the scenes shot. You're like, okay, we're here. We're obviously the Blues Brothers, but take a look at Aretha. She's the star of the show because she's, you know, she's the Queen of Soul. Again, this is kind of like a photo shoot kind of style. Again, showing how much respect these two actors, right, or comedians had for these icons, these musical icons that agreed to be part of the film. Again, this is Aretha. You can see the Blues Brothers in the background. Again, this is another situation where they're like being respectful, right? They have a wife having an argument with her husband, right? Because the husband's a part of the band and she doesn't want him to go. She's like, you better think, right? You better think about what you're trying to do to me, right? And then the Blues Brothers are like, this is not our fight, right? We're gonna sit back here and let these two like do their thing, and then hopefully we'll come away with our band member. They said great musical number, man. Great musical number. It's like freedom, 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 freedom. Man, I'm no Aretha Franklin, as you guys could probably gather. But yeah, who is? Look at this point, right? It's kind of like everybody knows that point, right? It's like she means business, right? So like, you know, it's like she gives him the business, right? Throughout this sequence, and he still decides to go with Jake and Elwood. So like she kind of knew, it's like, yep, I did my best, right? You know, it's like one of those things, like the idea of freedom. It's like that's sometimes when you love somebody, you kind of have to like let them do their own thing, right? I thought that was a very powerful message in the movie. You can see here, this was this is probably right when they walked in, and Aretha Franklin's character, I believe she's Mrs. Murphy in the movie. She's sizing them up. It's like, what the hell are these cats, right? Like, look, they're over here, right? We're like in the middle of like the hood, right? Like, you know, this is not a neighborhood you expect these two white men to show up in. And then she goes, right? She goes and takes their order, right? I think Elwood orders a bunch of toast. And then good old Jake orders 4 chickens. She's like, what, 4 chicken wings? Like, no, 4 whole chickens. Right? I'm coming here to eat. Like, I'm out here on business, right? We're on a mission from God, but I'm going to eat, right? Because I love this food. So he's kind of like, okay, that's another way, right? Remember the adaptations, right? And again, this is not really an adaptation. I think they really do love the food, right? When you go to another country, or to somebody else's house, right? That's not your own. You don't want to be too picky, right? Again, you want to eat what the locals eat, right? Because it's essentially the way you show respect for that other culture, right? You go and visit somebody else's house and they're from a different culture. You go and you eat their food, right? Like, again, even if it looks different, it's like something you never tried before. Again, unless it's something that you're allergic to, right? Like if you're allergic to seafood and somebody serves you seafood, don't eat the seafood to be respectful, right? That's a good way to like kill yourself. Don't do that. You just mention, it's like, hey, I can't eat that because I have an allergic reaction. Nobody's going to hold that against you, right? But if it's food that you're like, oh, I never tried that, I'm a little wary because it doesn't look like anything I've tried, you err on the side of trying the food, right? Because again, that's how you show respect. And this is what this is what comes into the universality of the Blues Brothers is that they go in to anywhere that they're not from, right? Any people that they don't know, and they show respect in their own way, right? They're still going to be the Blues Brothers, but they're going to make some adaptation to kind of go and show you, hey, we're not bad people. Like we're at least respectful. You know, we may be a little bad, but you know, we may do bad things, but we're really decent. You know, we show respect. And what does Aretha Franklin do? She goes to her husband. So Miss Murphy goes to her husband. She says, "You got two Hasidic Jew-looking guys out there, waiting for you." And again, another part of the universality of the look, and I talked about it earlier, is that if the Blues Brothers were to show up in Brooklyn, right off of Flushing and Broadway, right, it's a very, very high area for Orthodox Jewish gentlemen, they will not look out of place. Maybe the sunshades, right? That might be the only thing that makes them look out of place. But otherwise, they could show up into an organization, into a place like a synagogue, and maybe they'll take off the glasses, maybe they won't, but they won't really look that out of place, right? Maybe the whites might stand out, but again, it speaks to the universality, right? That's the whole point of this, is that these guys can get on anywhere. You can't put them in a spot or in a situation or in a group that they don't go in and feel completely comfortable, completely themselves. They might make a gesture of respect, but they're still going to be the Blues Brothers. I love it. Here's when they walk in, obviously kind of like, you know, kind of just like looking the surroundings, right? What do they think they're noticing? It's like, all right, there's a bunch of folks that are not white in here, right? Like this is not like we're gonna stand out, but they're not sweating it. Like I said, they know where they're at, and they know who they're looking for, right? Like they know that they're completely comfortable. Again, it reminds me of a situation that several situations. Actually, I don't know if I will go into all of it, but you know what I mean? Like, and some of them were before I was even a hat person, but I had one recently as a hat person. And I walked in and I was like, all right, I'm obviously very different, but and then you show your respect, right? Sometimes you use the term respect as in I'm trying to be respectful, and people get it, right? You don't speak the language. What word can you come up with? You know what I mean? Maybe you know only one word, right? And maybe it'll make people laugh, right? They're like, that was the worst pronunciation of our language I ever heard. But they will give you respect because you tried, right? Not because of you're kind of like you're speaking it like fluently, right? You're not. You're just saying, hey, I'm trying to be respectful of your language, of your culture, of your establishment, of your country, right? I'm doing my best because again, I'm just that kind of person. That's how I was raised, right? That's how he was raised by the nun, right? The penguin that they refer to, as well as Cab Calloway's character, who's their father figure. Again, we show respect to get respect. And of course, Ray Charles, right? What else can I say about Ray Charles? But just tremendous as the pawn shop owner, the music store, Ray's music store. And this is a businessman, obviously blind, but at some point they show the character. He's blind, but there was a boy trying to steal, and he shoots the gun, and obviously doesn't hit the boy. He shoots the wall, and the boy's like, "Hey, you're not going to get over." He's basically sending the message, is like, even though I'm blind, you're not going to get over on Ray, right? That's the thing. It's like I wasn't in business this long and doing this to be a pushover, right? I would have been far gone. So again, you got to respect that, right? You got to see how the director and the producers and the writers have crafted the characters here, right? Like one scene and just one picture speaks 1,000 words, right? And the smile. This is the main thing, like, right? So obviously Ray Charles wears sunglasses because, well, he's blind. He knows it makes him look cooler, right? He doesn't have to show, right? He's kind of like covering a lot of artists. Back in the day, sometimes they'll have a lazy eye, right? Notorious B.I.G. had a lazy eye. So he would wear sunglasses because that way his eye, when he does interviews, he just comes across as a cool, big dude. But he had an eye that would wander, right? So that's why the shades really came in handy. I'm sure for Ray Charles, that was part of it as well. You know, Ray Charles wasn't born blind, but became blind, at least according to the biopic, at a very young age. So these are the adaptations that he's made to fit in. And then the main thing is the smile, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like you could see, like you cannot, when you smile, there's so many things that happen when you do that, right? And that's one reason why I do it is because, well, one, you feel better, right? Your body will physically, like your brain will send out happy hormones into your body when you smile. And the other thing is, right, when you smile, it tends to make other people smile. You know what I mean? And that's, again, part of the secret sauce that is Ray Charles. And a lot of people, Stevie Wonder did it. A lot of people. It's not like Ray Charles invented the smile, right? Obviously not. The smile's been around for as long as there have been teeth. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, and also it has, like Ian mentioned this before, it has another function, right? Like when you show your teeth, it's also kind of like, you know, Ian made a great point about a lot of the folks, the tough guys, right? They would smile in your face, right? Because it's kind of like, hey, I'm friendly, but I'm physically showing you my teeth, meaning that if I wanted to, I could bite you, right? I got the tools, right? I may not be carrying a blade, I may not be carrying a gun, but I would just have to bite you. You know what I mean? And that is the original weapon, right? The original weapon is our nails in our teeth, right? And obviously our hands, right? These are all the weapons of choice when you didn't have weapons, right? Unless you couldn't reach a rock, right? You would have your teeth, your nails, and then your fists, right? And then your feet for kicking. So, you know, this is kind of the idea behind that, right? It's like what Ray's kind of connoting here, right? Besides the fact that he wants you to smile, is that I can bite too with these teeth. Like I'm not a sucker, is what he's telling you. It's like, right? It's like I'm not a sucker, bro. You know, and I love it. I love the multiple angles. And again, this probably says more about me than it does about Ray. But this is how I view this when I see it. This is the lens that I view it. So hopefully you guys, it's not completely wacky to you. But yeah, some more photos, right? Again, look at it. Look at this guy, you know, and you know, this is a very form-fitting shirt. You know, Ray's got some deltoids on him. You know, I don't know if Ray was a workout guy. I don't know if guys even worked out back then. At least not like they do now, right? But Ray's not a small dude. Like he's got some guns, if you will. You know, it's like it could be somebody like, hey, I wouldn't be surprised if Ray Charles could handle himself pretty well. You know, especially for a blind guy. Who knows? But yeah, you had to be tough. You know what I mean? Especially when you come up. Right, this is a physical impediment that Ray Charles had to deal with, and he did it with such grace, right? But one thing that came across really apparent in that movie is that he wasn't anybody's sucker. You know what I mean? He had problems with drugs like a lot of artists did, but he was not a sucker. You know, and you know that because his mom's character was a huge influence, you know, in Ray Charles's life, and they really I like the way they captured that in the movie. So if you haven't caught the movie Ray, I suggest it. Probably not a classic hat movie, but it doesn't matter. It's a classic life movie, right? So it's like, even if it doesn't help you in your hat journey, it might help you in your career journey as well as your life journey. So shout out to Ray Charles. Look at this again, another iconic photo. Again, black and white. Again, it shows you like this could easily be a photo that you hang up on your hat wall, right? So this might be one that if I go and I decide I want to get it, this might be the one I hang up, right? Because I love Ray Charles, right? I love the Blues Brothers. You know, any kind of black and white photo of them, right, would be perfect in my office, right here in my man cave. So yeah, just another iconic photo. Again, another one here. This one's not black and white, but you know, again, showing he's the center of the two of them, right? Again, they don't do that. It just seems like it's not an accident, right? Like we revolve around Ray, right? When Ray's here, we revolve around him. Again, see that? Same thing. This is our guy, right? Like we reverent. This might as well be our dad. Is how the Blues Brothers were, you know. Look at this. This like they're looking like Dan Aykroyd is looking at Ray Charles and he's like, man, what a character, right? And this is that classic, right? The middle of that classic song, "Shake Your Tail Feather." What a great song, man. It's impossible not to like bop to that song. Everybody shake your tail feather. Let's see. And I know I'm getting long in the tooth here, but I'll just keep running through some of these. Same thing, shake your tail feather. Shake your tail feather. This was something, I don't remember this, but when I saw the shot, I was like, okay, cheat you fair. Again, why not, right? Again, when the idea behind this is that you have to read the writing on the wall. When you enter the shop, right? I'm the pawn shop. I'm here to make money, right? And like, I know what I am, right? Like, I gotta love the self-awareness. We cheat you fair. James Brown. What can I say? I mean, we already talked about it. There's nothing I could tell you about James Brown that is gonna be like, you know, other than he's a minister here, which is like not a stretch for somebody with James Brown's moves, right? But if you watch the James Brown right biopic, I think there's several of them. There might be several. It's not. They should be. There was one in particular that came out fairly recently, and by recently I mean maybe the last 20 years. That was, I thought, really well done and showed you like what a badass this man was. You know what I mean? Like he was like, again, similar to Ray Charles. Wasn't blind, but again went through his own thing. And that's a story that's so common in terms of, right, in these biopics, right? They talk about the tough childhoods that a lot of these artists had, right? Like obviously, you know, and then, right, tough times makes for tough people, right? The reason why they became successful is because, well, they were one of the few that made it, right? There was a lot of tough people that didn't make it, and we never heard about them, right? They didn't become as big as James Brown or as Ray Charles or as Aretha Franklin. But you know, either way, we still celebrate them. It's, by celebrating James Brown, we also celebrate Ray Charles and Aretha Franklin. We also celebrate those folks that never got to that status, right? And we're probably every bit, maybe, who knows, tougher, but maybe the pendulum didn't swing their way, right? And they couldn't make it. So again, interesting here. And I think Shaka Khan was in the choir here. I don't have the photo. I believe she's here and right here in the background. But yeah, really another iconic artist. And again, played second fiddle here to James Brown because, of course, James Brown, right? But they do show her. This is Cab Calloway. Again, this is the Blues Brothers' dad. Look at that. They take off their jackets, right? They're dressed like they keep their hats, but they take off their jackets. This is them being reverent towards their dad or their father figure. Cab Calloway, and you can see where they got their style from, right? Cab Calloway is wearing everything here but his hat, and he was wearing it earlier when he got them, right? They had just seen the Penguin, and they realized that they had to help out their maternal figure, and now they're going to go pay their respects to their dad, right? So that's kind of lovely, right? They go visit mom first, then they go visit dad. I love that. I feel like anybody that has grown up in like the way I grew up, that's the order that you would do it, right? Because that's tough. He will get through it. You know, he can play second fiddle to mom, right? Mom's first, then dad. Gotta love it. This is Cab Calloway doing, right? So in the end, he does his musical number, Heidi, Heidi Ho. Man, what a great song. And he kills it, right? This is like much later Cab Calloway, and he still kills it, right? He still got the moves. He still got the swag. Shout out to Cab Calloway. What an icon, man. That song is just like, again, you can't, this is all musical candy. And then we got the very, very famous, also had it, John Lee Hooker. Man, what, I can't, again, I'm not gonna be able to tell you anything that new about John Lee Hooker, but like folks that know, and again, I'm not somebody that has consumed, like, I'm no expert in any kind of blues, but I do know what folks like John Lee Hooker represent to that musical group. And look how cool he is, right? Like we talked about, right? The epitome of cool, right? With Johnny Depp. John Lee Hooker here, man. He's like just cool. And in this hat, look at this hat. This hat could be a festival hat that maybe Josh creates, right? Right? This is very much a festival looking hat. Again, remember, this is 1980, right? But you can see, right, festival hats weren't something that just popped up, you know, in the 2020s or 2010s or whatnot. John Lee Hooker had something that could very well be called a festival hat on. He's got like, it looks like a leather jacket here. Very sharp, very cool. And this is very much a festival type hat, right? You gotta love it. You gotta love it. This is a movie behind its, ahead of its time. And then I'll keep going. Again, Soul Food Cafe, right? You can't put the Blues Brothers in any situation, in any neighborhood, and meeting any people without like them coming out and looking at home, right? This is not their neighborhood. They didn't grow up in the hood. They're orphans though. They have a lot to relate to, right? These are people that they love the music, they love the food, and they're just showing respect. They're just sitting here and they're being themselves and respecting, right? I think they're listening here to John Lee Hooker singing in the street, but I could be wrong about that. I just think of like the still shots here and what they're trying to convey with the stills. And look at this, right outside. What is Elwood doing, right? Do they look worried? Elwood's got the b-boy stance, right? He's got the self-soothing going, but he's got the intimidation. And then Jake has got his hands over the other, right? Very, very respectful, reverential, right? Jake is more being the reverential one. Elwood's being like the intimidating one, right? Like the b-boy stance guy. Like, we're badass, right? And it doesn't matter who's around. We're badass, right? We don't switch our badassery for anybody. We will always be that. Man, I gotta love it. Okay, Carrie Fisher. I don't want to beat this up because Carrie Fisher did not wear a hat, but Carrie Fisher was also an icon in the 1980s, right? Like, she was already iconic because, well, all you nerds out there, and I'm one of them, but I do love the Star Wars franchise. Carrie Fisher famously played Princess Leia, but in this movie, she played the crazy girlfriend or crazy ex-fiance of Joliet Jake, who's stalking them throughout the movie. And the thing about Carrie Fisher here is that she did a great job. It's a supporting role, but she killed it in this role, right? It's like, in nobody really talks about this role, but I want to show you some stills here about her character, who was like, again, the crazy ex-girlfriend, the crazy ex-fiance, which she did very well. She tried to kill, she was doing some things to try to kill them, but she came across as really badass, but also vulnerable. And I'll show you some stills here, right? So look at that, right? Look at, she's got like a bomb. She's got the remote control to a bomb, right? That she's about to go and explode the Blues Brothers on, because she's a jilted lover, right? She loves Jake, but she's like, all right, well, if I can't have you, nobody can have you, so I'm not gonna blow you up. I know it's kind of weird, but somehow it makes sense. Especially if you're somebody like Jake, right? Jake is the type of person that attracts these kind of women, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that his, a crazy ex-girlfriend or crazy ex-fiance, who Jake probably loves and she probably loves him, but they will go at it. Like, this is what this is who you expect. And look at this look. Look at this. It's kind of like just badassery. Again, she doesn't have a uniform on. She's got like a braid in her hair, and she just has this look about her. Carrie Fisher killed it here. And then she's got a machine gun, right? So you got her character donning a machine gun, and she doesn't look out of place. She's like, I will use this. I love you that much that I'll kill you. Kind of weird. But we're talking about 1980, Carrie Fisher, right? She was the badass at that moment, right? Princess Leia was not like, she was still pretty badass, right? This is like the predecessor for a character like Ripley, right? Sigourney Weaver in Aliens. Sarah Connor, right? Linda Hamilton's character in Terminator, right? These are like the strong, iconic women of the 80s. And I want to say Carrie Fisher will probably influence that a great deal. I'm sure there were others, but we're talking about Carrie Fisher because she was in this movie. But this is where it was going, right? The strong woman in the 80s was somebody that could pick up a machine gun. And Carrie Fisher here in 1980 is doing it. So shout out to Carrie Fisher, shout out to Sigourney Weaver, and shout out to Linda Hamilton, which kind of took up the mantle, right, in the 80s of those strong, iconic female characters, right? And they were like leading women, right? Especially Sigourney Weaver. She was the lead in the movie Alien and Aliens, right? She was that strong woman, and that she represents that for a lot of people, that source of strength. In terms of comic books, maybe Wonder Woman, right? Wonder Woman would be that comic book character that I think of, right? Maybe She-Hulk, but right, strong female roles and female characters that young females are looking at and like, hey, I could do that too, right? Maybe somebody that's going to join the military or join the police force or become a firefighter. They're looking at these movies and they're like, okay, I can do that because of Carrie Fisher. I can do that because of Linda Hamilton and because of Sigourney Weaver. Again, this is what happens with movies, right? Life imitates art sometimes, just like art imitates life. And you got to think about like what these characters represent, right? They're a lot more than we give them credit for sometimes. Again, this is also like, right, we talked about the toughness. Carrie Fisher, look at this look. Like she's in love. Like she's like showing her sweet side, right? We talked about the adaptations that we've seen in the scene about Jake, right? The tough guy from jail that takes off the shades and has a sweet face. Elwood did the same thing. Carrie Fisher in many ways outdid them because look at that. She doesn't have that. She doesn't have to take off her glasses. She doesn't have glasses. She just changes her facial expression, and you get to see it's like, oh, she's not so bad after all. Look at this face, you know? Like this is her being like longing, right? This is another one being scared, right? Being frightful, right? She's like in a very submissive kind of standpoint. She's on the ground, right? She's showing vulnerability in these stills. Again, this is a woman that was just carrying a machine gun, right? It's kind of like she went from Rambo to like, you know, sweetheart to like from Rambo to Bambi, you know, in just a matter of a few seconds. It's really amazing. So shout out to Carrie Fisher, the late great Carrie Fisher, for this. And then obviously, you know, everybody wants the love story. So this is kind of them making up at the end. You know, it's believable. Like I said, these two, you believe that they're a pair, right? I mean, it's just they're too nutty not to be. Again, another shot of that. This is kind of some behind the scenes photos, right? I believe this is Carrie Fisher and John Belushi. Again, you can see just a cast that really enjoyed working with each other. Again, I don't know if Carrie Fisher and John Belushi were an item. I don't know that. Maybe you guys might find out whether they were. I don't know. It doesn't matter because I don't care, to be honest. You know, they seem to get along really well. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were an item. They kind of had that chemistry. Al Pacino and Diane Keaton, the late great Diane Keaton, we lost her not too long ago. They had kind of that kind of chemistry in the Godfather, you know, because they were actually romantically involved. So interesting. Just again, you can see here, this is kind of like a photo shot, but just again, and I don't even know if this is Carrie Fisher, to be honest. I think there was another female lead. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on Carrie Fisher, but I just like seeing these behind the scenes photos sometimes to see how the cast got along, right? Doesn't mean they always did, but I like to see that, you know, cooperation. Again, that definitely is Carrie Fisher. That face is very difficult to, you know, she has that look. When she puts in that look, that Princess Leia look. Have you guys seen Star Wars and the various Star Wars movies? I guess the middle of the series that had Mark Hamill and you know, and Harrison Ford, as well as Carrie Fisher. You kind of know that look. You know, it's a very, very expressive look, and she killed it. You know, she almost did literally kill it when she was trying to kill the Blues Brothers, but you know, just great photos. Again, some more kind of silhouettes. This is Charles Napier. You might know him from like the, I believe, Murdoch in Rambo Part 2. You know, it's just kind of another hat. Again, this is the part of the movie that talks about the Western hat. Shout out to the Western hat, the cowboy look, right? We know, right? We know that it's the predecessor for the high crown fedora that everybody loves from the 20s and 30s, and also well into the 40s. But yeah, just you know, just in that character that you see here, like, hey, I know that guy. It's like, well, you might have seen him as Murdoch. He played other characters as well, but for me, he played, you know, I know him as Murdoch, the evil kind of you know, military guy in Rambo Part 2. you know. So yeah. Let's see here. John Candy, again, instead of a musical icon, he's a comedic icon, right? Again, a bigger guy, right? He plays somebody that's tied to the police force. But again, he has a set of aviator glasses on. Pretty badass, doesn't have a hat on, but has a set of aviators. I don't know if they're Ray-Bans, but they might have been. That's another classic style. We talked about the Wayfarer, the Club Master. The other ones are the Ray-Ban aviators. That just style, the aviator glasses style is just iconic, right? It's something that the military has adopted as well. At least some military folks wear aviators, right? You know, it's just a very iconic eyeglass style. And John Candy pulls it off. And also, John Candy's a legend, right? Shout out to John Candy. Just so many great movies from that man. And you can imagine that John Candy and John Belushi probably shared a lot of similarities, right? And I think they were actually both schooled in the same school of comedy, but it makes sense, right? Again, another big guy that did physical comedy, probably as a defense mechanism. Just more silhouettes. This is the bar, again, showing the Blues Brothers. They're at the Country Western Bar, no problem. They're gonna fit in, they're gonna still be fine, right? This is the bar. The folks at the bar looking at them sideways, saying, "Who the hell are these guys?" Again, hats here, but not cowboy hats, trucker hats, right? Because these are probably all truckers, you know, or at least some of them are, right? They're country music fans. They came here not to see a bunch of guys that are dressed in fedoras. They came to hear their music, which is, you know, country. This is the police, right? Also, right? John Candy, which is part of the police force. Again, these are folks that the cops have been chasing the Blues Brothers throughout this whole movie. It's a chase movie as well. And they're not worried. This is just business as usual for the Blues Brothers. Again, them in church, no problem. Still doing ourselves. We buttoned up our ties, our shirts. Sorry, not our ties, but we buttoned up our shirts, the top button. We reverent. This is more people at the bar looking at them funny, right? One guy's got a trucker hat, the other one's got like a leather cowboy hat. They're still giving them the look like, who the hell are these guys? And then John Candy without the aviators, right? A little less badass, right? Goes to show you, right? That same guy, that's pretty much the same kind of uniform, you know, still has the gun, but the aviators, the glasses, the sunglasses are a big part of the badassery. And there's a pig here. I can't help but notice that there's a pig with the cop's uniform on. So I just thought that was some interesting commentary on the part of the filmmakers. Again, more vulnerability, right? This is kind of like Jake falling down the steps, trying to get away from mom, from the penguin, right? He falls down. Like, this is some of the physical comedy. And you can see Elwood tending to his brother, right? Because that kind of maternal instinct in Elwood, like, I'm going to look after my brother who just fell down the stairs, you know? And Jake, being the tough guy, he's still like kind of like cowering because mom, right? Mom is, they're not tough enough for mom. Nobody is, right? This is Ray's music shop, again, showing a little bit of like the hood here that Ray's music shop. Again, the Blues Brothers are unfazed. This is just another silhouette shot. Them showing up, right, at Chez Paul's, the fancy restaurant, to pick up one of their bandmates. The doorman's out there, like, it's like, they don't care. Yeah, we know this car doesn't like fit in. We don't care. Here, take our car and, like, you know, park it, you know? These are the people at the restaurant. They're like complaining. They're like, dude, these two guys do not belong. They smell. They actually physically smell. Again, the Blues Brothers are unfazed. They're still going to be the Blues Brothers. Again, this is the same scene with this restaurant, unfazed. They made their adaptation by putting in the napkins. This is that scene I talked about before, where Jake is like giving Elwood the business about the car. It's like, hey, what did you do with our car? Why is this piece of crap? The police, right? Constantly chasing the Blues Brothers. They're still unfazed. I don't care. We're in jail. We don't care. We're still the Blues Brothers, and we're doing our music. We got, again, Pee Wee Herman here. We're unfazed. We got the Illinois Nazis after us. also unfazed, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're not phased. And I think this Nazi is wearing kind of a Legionnaire's hat. This is another kind of, part of that scene. You see the Legionnaire's hat here from the profile. You see these Nazis, these Illinois Nazis, which are chasing, might as well, right? Might as well add the Illinois Nazis to their plate. And yeah, I think that's all I got. I see more photos here, but they're probably not adding to the story. I'm going to just unshare that. All right, we're approaching 3 hours here. Not my intention originally, but that's just what happens when you have fun. I hope you guys had fun, man. Shout out to Paul. Shout out to Morgan for joining us. This was like a really great. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween. We're going to have trick-or-treaters coming by here probably this evening. We already have our pumpkin carved. We have our candy ready. It's not too late, right? If you guys have trick-or-treaters and you don't do candy, please go out and get some candy for those kids, right? It's like, I know again, hopefully you guys are people that are not opposed to having fun on Halloween yourselves, right? And dressing up. Even if you don't, go at least get some candy, right? It doesn't cost a lot, right? Unless you don't really have the money, right? Or for sure nobody's gonna be in your neighborhood, right? Like some people, they're very far from neighbors, so they don't get any trick-or-treaters. If that's the case, then maybe you'd be fine, right? You gotta know, if you lived in your neighborhood for a certain amount of years, you can know whether you should expect kids or not. If you do expect kids, just don't ruin it for them, in terms of like about not having candy, right? Otherwise, if you're not gonna have candy, turn off your front porch light, right? That's kind of like the universal indicator that, hey, we don't do trick-or-treating here in this house. It's like at the very least do that, right? It becomes your adaptation, and your show of respect, right, for those kids, right? Right, respect goes both ways. Doesn't matter about age. So support Paul and his channel. Support my channel. Support Josh's channel. Support Morgan always, for sure, right? Like you got to do that. Morgan deserves it. Obviously we're on our way. We're at, I think, 60 subscribers. At 100 subscribers, I'm going to give away this Knox custom, right? It's kind of a Trilby-esque Knox custom built in Canada. It's got some moth bites, but I think it'll make a good hat for somebody. So I will, start that process as soon as we hit 100. So we're only about 40 away, right? So hit me up and subscribe. Help me get to that 100 mark if you can. But even if you don't, right? Even if you don't support me, what I do insist that you do, right? You guys know where I'm coming from. This don't make me send Joliet Jake and his brother Elwood after you, right? Don't make me do it. Or maybe I'll just send their fiance to kind of, not to blow you up, right? Maybe she'll have a machine gun, maybe she won't. But basically what they'll ensure is that you go whoop, and you hit that subscribe button. But other than that, even if you don't do that, right? The one thing you got to do for me is stay adding, my friend. Have a great day. Happy Halloween. Ciao, everybody. Bye. Happy Halloween.